Chapter 2076. According to the art of war, one should win by surprise. No one on the scene thought of Han Fei's trump card. Even Luo Xiaobai, when she saw the 4 heaven-opening states, could only put Han Fei's trump card on the mermaid royal family or the martial emperor city. But who could have known that this trump card was Kong Shun? King Wu couldn't help but narrow his eyes. The martial emperor city really didn't have this information. When did Han Fei get in touch with Kong Shun? Sherpa Huang was also thinking about this. The 100 Demon Clan and the underwater human race had always been one, and it was impossible that the 100 Demon Clan didn't even have a spy in the underwater human race. Kong Shun and Han Fei were so important, but there was no news at all before this. Maybe only Kong Shun and Han Fei knew about this alliance, and no one else knew about it. As for when they joined forces, it was hard to guess. Xiao Hongzhu smiled slightly. No wonder they were swallowed by the abyss every time they fought. It turned out to be a fake fight. The old tortoise who was fighting Bei Luochen probably lost on purpose, right? Otherwise, how could he have been defeated in less than half an incense stick's time if he was able to shake the heaven creation stage? Li Qingyi nodded. Han Fei's move is indeed unpredictable. However, it shouldn't be easy to kill a heaven-opening state cultivator. Unless Han Fei could decide the outcome in an instant in Bei Luochen's Origin Sea. In fact, as soon as Han Fei entered Bei Luochen's Origin Sea, he threw out 3 sun-moon shells, stinky liquid, and soul poison, and the infinity water was instantly detonated. While Bei Luochen's soul was shaken, the first thing he wanted to do was to completely destroy his Origin Sea. For this purpose, Han Fei waved his hand again, and 2 arrays appeared. 36 fierce immortals appeared. They pierced through the sky and shook the earth veins. Rumble, all of this happened in an instant. Han Fei sensed Bei Luochen's Origin Sea and was slightly surprised to find that this guy's Origin Sea was as wide as 230,000 kilometers. There were countless mineral deposits, and abundant chaotic qi and immortal spiritual qi. However, when the explosive power of the infinity water swept over 100,000 kilometers, Bei Luochen suddenly came back to his senses. A large amount of celestial spirit qi blocked the power of the explosion of the infinity water. Above the sky dome, the celestial evil energy was detonated by several large stars and failed to do anything. On the other hand, in the earth veins, the immortal's baleful aura had destroyed the 25,000-kilometer-wide earth veins. The 10,000 poison skies' great poison had been unleashed. At the very least, Bei Luochen's strength had dropped by at least 30%. Coupled with the power of Han Fei's Origin Sea, Bei Luochen's strength would drop by at least 40% to 50%. Han Fei, I'm going to kill you. At this moment, Bei Luochen didn't seem to care about Kong Shun's pressure attack at all. Instead, he was going all out to kill Han Fei. Tens of thousands of deity spiritual qi exploded in Bei Luochen's Origin Sea and turned into divine wheels, trying to destroy Han Fei. However, Han Fei remained motionless, and several small vines stretched out from between his eyebrows. The divine wheels that were formed by the immortal qi dissipated almost instantly and turned back into immortal qi. Suddenly, a storm formed by immortal qi spread out in Bei Luochen's Origin Sea. How could this be? Why is this Emperor's Origin Sea not under your control? What is this? Han Fei said, "You can only blame yourself for what you've done. Son of AB *TCH, how dare you attack the Yin-Yang heaven? Do you deserve it?" Although Han Fei couldn't fight now, with a thought, the ultimate blade slashed crazily in Bei Luochen's Origin Sea. After all, the ultimate blade was a divine weapon, and Bei Luochen couldn't block it easily. Moreover, every second that Han Fei stalled Bei Luochen here meant one more second for Kong Shun to attack Bei Luochen. They were both in the heaven-opening state. If Bei Luochen let Kong Shun hit him, especially now that his strength had been greatly reduced, Kong Shun would be able to kill him in just a few seconds. In fact, Kong Shun didn't stay idle. His seemingly terrifying broken body, chaotic aura, and chaotic power recovered in an instant. Then, Kong Shun pressed his staff against Bei Luochen's body, and the Black Moon Void Sky Leech had to come out to protect its master. However, in the face of Kong Shun's attack, how could a spiritual beast that hadn't reached the heaven-opening state resist? There was a loud bang. A bloody light flashed in the sky, and a crack appeared. Bei Luoqin's powerful spiritual beast that had accompanied him for many years died. Only then did Shi Pahuang realize that the situation had been reversed. Bei Luoqin had been tricked, and Kong Shun had betrayed him. He had lost 2 heaven-opening state experts at once. And what about his opponents? One was the Snail Emperor, one was the Sword God, one was Kong Shun, and one was a turtle that could fight against a heaven-opening state expert. At this time, Shi Pahuang reacted quickly. When Han Fei broke through Bei Luoqin's origin sea, Shi Pahuang immediately shouted, "Lu Jianxue, stop Kong Shun." In the blink of an eye, 7 streaks of sword radiance traversed 10,000 li and appeared on the battlefield. When everyone turned to look, they saw a giant black and brown salamander crawling out of the void. On the back of the salamander, 7 sword-like stingers had just been shot out. The Snail Emperor's face changed slightly. Another heaven-opening state expert? Tai Yuan Old Turtle heaved a long sigh. The 100 demons really hid their strength. 30,000 years ago, Lu Jianxue failed to open the sky and died on the spot. It seems to be just a show. Unfortunately, now that Han Fei has broken into Bei Luoqin's origin sea, Kong Shun needs to cooperate with him. Besides, although Kong Shun and Han Fei are pretending to fight, Bei Luoqin won't be fooled so easily if he isn't seriously injured. Now, who else can stop him except me? However, Tai Yuan Old Turtle knew that he had also been seriously injured in order to put on a show. It wasn't a show. His strength had been reduced by at least 30%, and he probably couldn't resist Lu Jianxue for a few seconds. He didn't know if Han Fei could kill Bei Luoqin so quickly. Just as the Tai Yuan Old Turtle was about to attack, suddenly, above the void, a cold-looking man with long hair, a snow-white robe, and a blood-red longsword floating behind him stood there silently. In addition to the sword floating behind him, this man was also holding a sword in his hand. His thumb moved the hilt of the sword, and a silver light flashed. No one saw him draw the sword, and the 7 blades that were shooting towards Kong Shun were broken. Shi Pahuang was dumbfounded, and so was Lu Jianxue. Where the hell did this guy come from? Dao Yuan was horrified. Isn't Han Fei pretending to be Wang Yijian? Why is he here? Oh no, Dao Yuan was horrified. Han Fei deliberately pretended to be Wang Yijian and then revealed his identity, which would undoubtedly make people believe that Wang Yijian was really dead. But in fact, it was just to cover up that Wang Yijian was still alive. True and false, false and true. This time, he had really fallen for it. Wang Yijian raised his head slightly, and the blood-red sword floating behind him began to buzz. He said, "You don't deserve to use a sword." Lu Jianxue hadn't transformed into a human being yet. He snorted and began to gather energy like lasers in his eyes. "I'm Lu Jianxue, a natural-born swordsman. How can you, an acquired sword cultivator, be my match?" Lu Jianxue was gathering energy crazily. The sword intent in his body exploded into the sky, and the waves and the drops of water turned into swords. Wang Yijian was expressionless. The blood-red sword on his back hummed even louder. All the spiritual qi and energy in the sky gathered. In the sky, a mysterious Taoist aura descended. The 2 sides looked at each other indifferently. Behind them, Bei Luoqin's body had been mostly crushed. He managed to divert some of his attention to fend off Kong Shun. However, it seemed that his strength had been weakened by at least 50%. He didn't look like a super overlord anymore. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Lu Jianxue let out a furious roar. Kill! Swish! The light turned into a sword. Wherever it passed, the air seemed to be frozen, revealing the boundary between reality and nothingness. Before the sword arrived, the water under Wang Yijian had already been pierced through by the invisible sword intent. Facing such a horrifying sword attack, the emperors were all stunned. Shi Pahuang yelled, "Sword salamanders are born with sword embodiments. It's still unknown who will win today. So what if Wang Yijian is still alive? However, no one paid attention to Shi Pelong's yelling. The old snail was speechless. What's the point of just boasting? We'll only know if you can do it after we fight. Wang Yijian stretched out his hand and pointed at the blood-red sword that had been ready for action for a long time. Before anyone could react, the sword pierced through the void. Only the color of heaven and earth could be seen. It was so simple that only an endless sword light could be seen. Lu Jinshue's sword source turned into a light pillar. However, the light pillar swelled up and couldn't go any further in the air. When the sword light pierced through the light pillar started to expand and exploded. It exploded into flames that covered a radius of 10,000 miles. Even Kong Shun and Bei Luochen were pushed back more than 30,000 miles. However, Wang Yijian and Lu Jianxue, who were on the battlefield, didn't move. What was different was that a sword chi barrier appeared in front of Wang Yijian. No matter how horrifying the remaining power was, it couldn't shake the barrier at all. As for Lu Jianxue, his body turned into ashes in front of everyone. He disappeared like a piece of burning paper. His divine soul did not even have the chance to make a final ruckus before it vanished into thin air, hiding for 30,000 years just for one sword attack. Who knew what Lu Jianxue was thinking at the last moment? Boom! In the sky, a blood-red crack appeared. For a moment, the world darkened and a blood-red light filled the air. The sight of an emperor fall made countless people on the battlefield shudder. The emperors were shocked. An emperor fall appeared right at the beginning? Wang Yijian said indifferently, born with sword embodiment. What a mess. My name is Wang Yijian, one sword slaying emperors. Counterattack and kill the sea demons. All of a sudden, the powerhouses from the bottom of the sea who were fearlessly charging towards the human venerable realm were all dumbfounded. What the hell was going on? We're already angry, and now you're saying we're allies? The problem was that if it was just one or two kings shouting this, then that would be one thing. But practically all the sea expansion kings were shouting this. How could that be fake? Their perception was limited, and they only knew that a heaven-opening expert had fallen, but they did not know who it was. However, from the looks of it, it was definitely not from a human side, so it was most likely from the 100-demon tribe. To be able to kill a heaven-opening expert in such a short period of time, it was no wonder that the underwater humans wanted to rebel. All of a sudden, their companions became their enemies, and the army of hundreds of demons was slaughtered. Those below the venerable realm were still fine, as they fought with each other and could still fight back and forth. This was because none of the human explorers had come. The advantage of the venerable realm had directly become a disadvantage. The venerables of the underwater humans had turned the tables, greatly reducing the pressure on the human side. In terms of the combat power of the venerables, they actually began to suppress the 100-demon race. As for the sea expansion realm, it was miserable. Originally, they were only barely on par with the human side. However, the result of the rebellion of the underwater humans could be imagined. On the human side, the battle power of the sea expansion realm had reached a terrifying number of over 80, while the 100-demon race, including the kings that Bei Luochen and He Daoyuan had brought, only had around 40 venerables. Moreover, He Daoyuan had already run away. When the kings that He Daoyuan had brought saw this, they all fled. How could they still fight? If the heaven-opening realm experts ran away, would they, the kings, stay here and wait for death? Han Xin shouted, "Don't stop the kings from the inner region. Let them go. Today, kill all the sea expansion realm experts of the 100-demon race." Han Xin had also reached his peak at this moment. He shouted, "1,000 trickeries, godly ghost disc, fourth form, ghost god true form." At that moment, Xie Xian only felt that all his battle tactics had been calculated by Han Xian. He wanted to retreat because he knew that the 100-demon race's momentum was gone. Now was the best time to retreat. Immediately, Xie Xian's 300 clones were blocked by countless array formations. Not a single one of them could escape. Han Xian sneered. "Do you think I will let you go?" Shi Pehuang, who was fighting with the Snail Emperor, felt his heart turn cold at this moment. He couldn't move this snail at all. It could be said that this snail was not moved by force or persuasion. The spatial vortex and the endless void couldn't take him away. He couldn't absorb the blood chi of the snail at all. It was completely blocked by the shell. His full-strength attack couldn't even move the snail's shell. However, the paralyzing fluid of the snail was able to turn the entire space extremely viscous. It was not viscous to the body, but to the soul. Anyone who was corroded by this power would be paralyzed, either in the soul or both, causing their battle prowess to plummet. If it wasn't for the fact that this snail didn't know how to fight, Sherpa Huang felt that he would have run long ago. But even then, he'd already suffered heavy injuries now, because only after fighting for a long time did he notice that this snail's paralyzing energy was actually nibbling away at his quintessence of the Grand Tao. In this battle, his strength had dropped by at least 30%, and he would probably be unable to recover without resting for a few thousand years. But Sherpa Huang knew that if he retreated today, he would never have any hope of surpassing heaven opening. But if he didn't retreat today, he would definitely die in this battle. Traitor Kong Shun, as long as I, Sherpa Huang, am not dead, I will return for revenge. I will make you live in fear for the rest of your life. At this moment, Bei Luochen's body had been destroyed by Kong Shun. The latter had pierced through Bei Luochen's soul and heard Sherpa Huang's arrogant voice. He said disdainfully, "Underwater humans are also humans. Why will we team up with you sea monsters? Let's talk about that after you survive." The Snail King also said, "Me? It's not that easy to escape from my control." Humph! Sherpa Huang turned into his octopus form and cut off 6 tentacles. When the tentacles were destroyed, 6 giant void paths were forcefully opened up. No one knew where they led to. Sherpa Huang took one last look at the place where the Beast Kings fought and ran away with tears in his eyes. As for the old snail, with a thought, the area in front of the 6 void holes seemed to be covered in a layer of net. From afar, Sherpa Huang crashed into the net, and the old snail thought he had trapped him. Who would have thought that a tentacle would reach out from this guy's body? As it turned out, Sherpa Huang had retreated from his physical body and nurtured a new one within him. The 6 void paths disappeared. The old snail was dumbfounded and heaved a sigh. Not bad to be able to escape from me. But, Han Fei should be able to find it anyway. It doesn't matter. This expedition had only lasted for less than the time it took for an incense stick to burn, and the situation had undergone a great reversal. The human race as a whole turned the tables and fought bravely. At this moment, in Bei Luochen's origin sea, the chaotic energy and the celestial spiritual energy were crazily absorbed by the demon purification pot out of his control. Huang Jingyuan was almost sucked to death in this way. But Huang Jingyuan could still use the remaining energy to summon an attack from Sovereign. But what about Bei Luochen? He had nothing. He didn't even have the ability to summon an attack from a Sovereign. He could only roar hysterically in the origin sea. Han Fei, if that's the case, then you will die with me. You will die if you oppose me. Bang, bang, bang. At that moment, Bei Luochen's entire origin sea started to collapse. He had exiled the origin sea into the endless void. He wanted to drag Han Fei down with him at the cost of his own life. But how could Han Fei die with him? Although there were resources and treasures everywhere in the origin sea, he had to be alive to take them. At this moment, Han Fei activated the demon purification pot crazily. The navigator appeared in his hand, and he slashed out with the Tao Convergent sword, try to cut a way out. However, Bei Luochen had gone completely crazy. Han Fei also went crazy. At this moment, there was only the last scroll of Deity killing Qi left. There were only 18 of them left. At this moment, they were all released. However, this was Bei Luochen's origin sea. As the saying went, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. No matter how hard Han Fei tried, he couldn't resist the resources in Bei Luochen's origin sea. The entire origin sea was about to be exiled into the endless void. With a flash between Han Fei's eyebrows, a small vine stretched out, and the power that Bei Luochen used instantly collapsed. Han Fei took the opportunity to tear open Bei Luochen's origin sea. The next second, he appeared in reality with a swoosh. Phew, Bei Luochen is crazy. He almost killed me. At this moment, a blood-colored crack appeared in the sky again. It was bright red and dazzling, as if a huge eye had opened in the sky. Blood flowed out of it and turned into a rain of blood. Seeing this scene, Han Fei let out a long breath. He had finally won. However, Han Fei didn't notice that along with him, a soul ducked quietly attached to his body. Chapter 2078. The mighty human expedition army marched for a month and fought for half an hour. In just the time it took for an incense stick to burn, 2 heaven-opening stage powerhouses had fallen. This result could be said to be the first in the history of the chaotic Azure Sea. So far, only 3 heaven-opening state overlords had died, and all of them were related to Han Fei. In the distance, King Wu and Xia Hongzhu, who were watching the battle, didn't expect the battle to end in such a way. Of course, they had to admire Han Fei's plan. The giant beast attack, Kong Shen's betrayal, and Wang Yijin's appearance were all beyond everyone's expectations. They didn't know how and when Han Fei convinced Kong Shen. However, this battle had established 2 of the strongest human cultivators. One was Han Fei, who killed 2 heaven-opening overlords as a sea expansion state overlord. Although the heaven-opening state overlord helped him both times, it was still a demonstration of his strength. The other was Wang Yijin, who almost established his position as the strongest sword cultivator in the chaotic ocean. Although the sword god was strong, he couldn't kill an emperor with one strike. However, Wang Yijin did it, and he did it cleanly. His sword was plain and unadorned, simple to the extreme. It only contained the purest killing intent. It was almost certain that in the long future, because of this sword, many people would yearn to walk on the path of sword cultivation. Xia Hongzhu said, "Let's go." The 100 demon clans were wiped out in this battle, and the human race will have a civil war. However, He Daoyuan won't stand chance. Han Fei is not bad. Chen Huangdian slightly frowned. Do you approve of Han Fei? Xia Hongzhu slightly shook her head. Yes, I do. He's bold, meticulous, and unpredictable. He's an ambitious man. However, I don't approve of him. His actions are too radical and risky. If he's not careful enough, he'll be doomed eternally. Since he's so strong now, let's see when he can open the sky. After that, Xiao Hongzhu left, followed by Li Qingdi and Chen Huangdian. This time, although the 100 demon clans might not be wiped out, they would never rise again. The strong would always be strong. The human race had many strong cultivators, and the 100 demon clans were declining. Even if they could rise again, it wouldn't be 10,000 years. King Wu turned around and left quietly. He Daoyuan had escaped, Sherpa Huang had escaped, and Bei Luochen and Lu Jinxue had fallen. Kong Shen came and stood beside Han Fei. Sherpa Huang escaped. Can you find him? Han Fei said with a smile. Unless he can escape from the chaotic Azure Sea, there's no way he can escape from me. At most, he'll live a few more days. We should first exterminate the 100 demons and share the resources before thinking about killing Sherpa Huang. Then Han Fei raised his hands, and the Apocalypse Divine Technique descended. It enveloped him, Kong Shen, and the Tai Yuan Old Turtle. The injuries of the 3 people were rapidly recovering. Kong Shen couldn't help admiring his decision. Fortunately, he didn't become an enemy of the human race, because even now, he didn't know if Han Fei had any backup plans. After a while, most of their injuries had healed, and Kong Shen said, the undersea humans and sea demons have different paths, so we can't work together. After this, the human race would be unified, and they hoped that they could exchange their needs with the underwater human race. Although our bloodline was originally formed from humans transforming into demons and cultivating, we are still able to cultivate. But when one reached the Exalt realm, one would realize that the Exalt realm wasn't the same. In fact, the cultivation of all races will eventually lead to the same destination. Although the human form may not be the most suitable combat form in the world, it's our final choice. Han Fei said indifferently. Of course, the chaotic Azure Sea is not the Great Era. It's meaningless to fight with each other here. Okay, I can only promise you 20% of the resources of the 100 demons this time. The human race is weak, and there are still wars in the Inner Sea, which consumes a lot of resources. And the giant beast clan, 20% is already a lot. Han Fei and Kong Shin's contact was actually very short. So short that after Han Fei and Ashur Pohong fought last time, Han Fei left a projection at the place where they taught. The way to convince Kong Shun was also very simple. The human race accepted the underwater human race and came out of the chaotic Azure Sea together. Because when facing the great era of the Sea Realm, it wouldn't be the chaotic Azure Sea, but the real world of all races. Since Kong Shun had already opened the sky, he definitely knew the many restrictions of the chaotic Azure Sea. Therefore, he also had a very high yearning for the Great Era. In other words, no one in the heaven-opening realm wanted to stay in the chaotic Azure Sea, because there was no hope for them. Kong Shun nodded slightly, as if he didn't care much about it. Boom, boom! In the sky, cracks of the Great Tao bloomed one after another, because Han Fei joined the battle of the sea-opening realm again. In this round of harvest, the number of dead kings reached 23. The only one among the 100 Demons clan was already an arrow at the end of its flight under the fourth form of Han Xian's Qianji godly ghost disc. Han Fei wanted to intervene, but Han Xian stopped him. Han Xian also lost his temper. As one of the most experienced kings, the trial methods Han Xian designed had trained countless strong masters. The fourth form of the Qianji godly ghost disc simulated the Great Tao and Wang Yijian's Sword Tao just now. Even Wang Yijian couldn't help but be attracted by Han Xian's means and stared at Han Xian for a long time. Although Han Xian was only imitating it, not everyone could imitate his own sword rhythm just by looking at it once. Moreover, the power that Han Xian simulated was not as simple as the shape. The magical deduction method of the Qianji godly ghost disc could directly simulate the Great Tao. If it weren't for his own strength, the power that he imitated couldn't be as strong as the original combat skill. Han Xian could actually be regarded as a terrifying existence. Even so, 3 hours later, Han Xian won by a narrow margin and killed Xie Xian with a seriously injured body. When the kings of the 100 Demons clan were crazily slaughtered, the venerables of the 100 Demons clan had already begun to run away crazily. However, under the command of Luo Xiaobai, less than 50% of the venerables of the 100 Demons clan ran away. This was already a very exaggerated result. After this battle, the 100 Demon tribe would not be able to rise again. It would be extremely difficult for them to find a new suitable place to live in the chaotic Azure Sea. In the end, no one paid attention to the big monsters who were still in the Tao-seeking state. Even the human venerables didn't pay attention to these people. When one reached a certain level, the target and opponent would become different. It was meaningless to kill enemies of a lower level. Besides, although the purpose of this expedition was to suppress the 100 Demons clan, everyone knew that the 100 Demons clan would definitely have a lot of gains after their defeat. At this moment, they were all thinking about how to divide the resources. Han Fei didn't disappoint them. He said, "Everyone gather. Clean up the battlefield in 2 hours. Then, follow me to clean up the 100 Demons clan and divide the resources." Ho! The human king is invincible. The human clan is invincible. The 100 Demons clan is destroyed. The human clan will be strong. In the chaotic Azure Sea, the human clan will be the master. Your Majesty, we are willing to follow you into the inner area and eliminate the 2 traitors, the Grand Pure and Wuji. Han Fei's voice shook. There's no hurry to eliminate the Grand Pure and Wuji. The outer area will be unified and the war will end soon. I'll give you time to recuperate. Everything had to be planned. The crusade against the inner region was imperative, but not now. Hurry up and clean up the battlefield. At that moment, Han Fei felt a surge of power of will, which was the trust of the venerables. After such a long time, even Han Fei didn't know how much power of will he had accumulated. Han Fei estimated that this power of will might be able to help him open the sky. 3 hours later, In the sea area that spanned more than 500,000 kilometers across the abyssal chasm gorge, there was an imperial city. Countless sea demons were unyielding, but they had no impact on human beings. A large number of sea demons were expelled, and countless resources were plundered from the imperial city and the surrounding mines. In half a day, more than 900 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones were plundered. Although this number was far from the 3 trillion that Han Fei boasted, it was still terrifying enough. After all, these 900 billion top-grade spirit stones were not included, and there were many miscellaneous things that were not included. Basically, it belonged to whoever grabbed it first. Luo Xiaobai didn't allow him to share the rest of the spiritual stones that were plundered from the treasure house. As the human king, Han Fei couldn't let her down at this time. Just this amount of resources was enough for Han Fei to say, "After this battle, the seabed human clan will return to the human clan. Emperor Kong Shun, join hands with me to kill Bei Luochen and get 20%. Luo Xiaobai and the others were presiding over the division of resources. Although they were shocked by the huge number of resources, they still held back their excitement, cupped their hands at Kong Shun, and divided 180 billion resources to the seabed human clan. Han Fei continued, "This time, the human race's sword divine heaven deserves 20% of the prizes." Zhang Xuanyu, Lu Rinquang, and the others were thrilled. They looked at each other and thought, "That's all money." She gave it away just like that, and she even gave so much. However, when they thought that Wang Yijian had killed an emperor, they felt that it was reasonable. Then Han Fei said with a smile, "The Behemoth clan is a close friend of the human clan. As the main force of this expedition, we will get 20%. At this time, even the Snail Emperor couldn't help but nod in satisfaction. Han Fei was very bold. It was great that he was willing to give up this share of resources. One had to know that there were a total of 29 giant beasts, including the Emperor Snail, and they were allocated 180 billion resources. The amount of resources that each person could get was frighteningly large. It was calculated in billions. In the end, only 40% of the resources were left, which was also a terrifying number. Han Fei said, "In the human clan, all the sea expansion realm warriors and kings can get 3 billion resources. All the venerable realm warriors can get 10 million resources." Sea expansion experts were fine, as they had seen money. Although the risk wasn't that great in a real battle, no one knew just how dangerous it would be in a real battle. However, the 3 billion did meet the expectations of the kings. After all, few of the kings had more than 1 billion resources with them when they went to the imperial palace. As the supporter, advocate, and decision-maker of this expedition, it was understandable that Han Fei would get 180 billion resources. Some people even thought it was too little. Luo Xiaobai glanced at Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Rinquang. "Come here and distribute the resources." "I'm coming." Lu Rinquang rushed over with a smile, feeling like he was dreaming. Was 3 billion a lot? This was almost the highest single income they had ever received. Besides, there were still a lot of resources in the Origin Sea that hadn't been used up. At this moment, Han Fei had become a thigh. If he hugged a thigh, he would get meat. Zhang Xuanyu even shouted, "Everyone, all the resources. Count them on the spot. Line up." Chapter 2079. To be honest, after killing 2 heaven-opening state experts in this expedition, Han Fei let out a long sigh of relief. Because the heaven-opening state was the ceiling of strength in the chaotic ocean. As long as there were heaven-opening state experts, neither the Yin-Yang Heaven nor himself could guarantee their safety. Besides, this victory was of great significance. Not only did it establish his dominance over the human race, but it could also be predicted that in the future, in the outer sea, how many people in the 25 immortal palaces would provide him with the power of faith. That was simply an unimaginable number. Han Fei suspected that Dao Yuan and Bei Luochen were able to reach the heaven-opening state so quickly because they were once leaders of the human race and had the blessing of the power of faith. The resources were still being divided and plundered. However, Luo Xiaobai still sent Han Fei's share to him in advance. As members of the Thug Academy, They knew that resources were not easy to come by. Besides, according to Han Fei's description, the more resources they needed in the future. What Han Fei told them alone consumed hundreds of billions of resources. And now, Luo Xiaobai, Zhang Xuanyu, and the others only had a little more than 10 billion resources each. Of course, it was enough for them. However, they didn't think it was enough for Han Fei. When Han Fei was in seclusion in the Yinyang heaven, others didn't know, but how could they not? Luo Xiaobai came to Han Fei's side and threw a large pile of resources to Han Fei. Luo Xiaobai said, "Shall I go back?" However, at the moment when Luo Xiaobai threw the resources to Han Fei suddenly had a warning. The faces of Empress Snail, Wang Yijian, and Kong Shun all changed drastically. Not good. Kong Shun was the closest to Han Fei. He was about to take action, but he saw that the void where Han Fei was collapsed. This time, even Han Fei was caught off guard. Besides, Luo Xiaobai was still beside him. Han Fei clearly felt that the sudden burst of power around him was intended to crush Luo Xiaobai. How could Han Fei tolerate this? Between him and Luo Xiaobai, Han Fei suddenly pushed out his palm, wrapped Luo Xiaobai with the infinity water, and pushed her away. At that moment, Han Fei had already fallen. In the end, there was only a crazy laugh left in the void. Han Fei, even if I die, I will banish you. Kong Shun and Wang Yijian arrived almost at the same time. Wang Yijian directly attacked. His sword slashed open the void, connecting to the endless void. However, what awaited Wang Yijian was a void storm. No matter how powerful the heaven-opening state was, it still couldn't set foot in the endless void, and Han Fei didn't come out. At this moment, Xia Xiaochan, Zhang Xuanyu, Lu Renquang, Old Bai, and Old Jiang all arrived. Tang Gu, Zhou Ling, and the other people who were close to Han Fei, who only wanted to watch Han Fei grow stronger in secret, all came. Wang Yijian glanced at the dumbfounded Luo Xiaobai. "I can't get it back," Kong Shun said. Bei Luochen purposely severed his own Tao to make people think that he had died. He left a trace of his soul behind, waiting for Han Fei to make a mistake and drag him into the endless void. Moreover, he detonated the last strand of his remembrance. They prevented us from rescuing them. Luo Xiaobai was dumbfounded. How did this happen? Xia Xiaochan was anxious. Is the infinite void completely inaccessible? You are at the heaven-opening stage. In the blink of an eye, you will definitely be able to bring him back. At this moment, the Snail Emperor said, "The infinite void doesn't necessarily mean death. According to my inherited memories, if you can find a way out in a short time, you can also survive." However, Bei Luochen used the last of his strength to stir the void here and seal the exit. In a flash, he might have already appeared in a faraway place. Qinji, Void Break. In Han Xian's hand, the Qinji, godly ghost disc turned into a tangible array, forcibly tearing the void and connecting to the endless abyss, trying to let Han Fei see it. Unfortunately, after 5 breaths of time, no one came out. The endless void didn't have the strength to forcefully support it and rapidly closed. Han Xian grimaced and gritted his teeth. Bei Luochun, the Wuji heavens. If anything happens to my nephew, I will crush the entire Wuji heavens. After a brief daze, Luo Xiaobai suddenly felt that something was wrong, and the infinity water gathered in front of her again. Luo Xiaobai had no time to care about anything else and immediately asked, "Can we find him through this thing?" Xia Xiaochan's heart did a flip. The infinity water and the metamorphosis water recognized each other at the same time, and both of them had strong soul imprints. Xia Xiaochan immediately said, "As long as this drop of water doesn't become ownerless, it means that he's still alive." At this moment, Li Yingtian of the Ashen Heavens flew close. This is the chaotic original water, an important treasure of the Ashen Heavens. Once it becomes ownerless, it will return to the original form of the chaotic original water and wait for its new master. As long as it is still a drop of water, the human king must still be alive. The Snail Emperor said, "Go back and wait." He's not here anymore. It's meaningless to wait here. Xiao Xiaochan clenched her fists and said firmly, I'm going back to the royal family of the mermaids. In the infinite void, a place that even the heaven-opening stage dared not set foot on. It was pure nothingness. There was no sense of direction or time. He didn't know where he was or where he would float to. The only thing that Han Fei thought was that this place was full of chaotic qi. If he could absorb the chaotic qi instead of getting lost here, he might be able to absorb a lot of it. At the last moment, Han Fei already knew why he had been tricked. There was only one possibility. Bei Luochen cut off his own path and created the illusion of his death in order to wait for an opportunity to drag him into the infinite void. Han Fei was indeed too careless. He thought that Bei Luochen would definitely die when a celestial phenomenon appeared. Sure enough, the heaven-opening stage couldn't be simple. Even under such circumstances, Bei Luochen still got what he wanted. Han Fei immediately used the method of time reversal. However, in the infinite void, the concept of time didn't seem to work, because he was directly lost as soon as he was dragged in. After time reversal, Han Fei seemed to have traveled a long distance, but he didn't find the entrance to the infinite void. Knowing how terrifying the boundless void was, Han Fei activated the mark of the Void Temple without hesitation at the first moment. However, what made Han Fei's heart heavy was that the infinite void seemed to be isolated from the outside world. Even a mark of the Void Temple didn't work. There wasn't a big void hand stretching from the distant infinite land to grab him. At this time, Han Fei realized that even the Void Temple wasn't omnipotent. Maybe they were very strong, but in this mysterious world, there were still places they couldn't set foot in. In the end, Han Fei had to use his last resort, which was to use the nautical panorama. Fortunately, the nautical panorama still existed, and it was guiding Han Fei. At that moment, Han Fei leaped with a golden light and flew frantically in the direction pointed by the nautical panorama. What a pity. The time of 7 or 8 seconds was too short. In the infinite void, he might have been too far away from the previous battlefield, so when the nautical panorama stopped, Han Fei couldn't run to the exit. At this point, the 3 chances of the nautical panorama were also used up. When Han Fei was at his wit's end, he even wanted to hide in the Origin Sea. However, something unexpected happened. In the infinite void, he couldn't enter the Origin Sea at all. His soul power seemed to be restricted by the rules in the infinite void. Not only could he not enter the Origin Sea, but he couldn't even communicate with the Origin Sea. At this time, Han Fei had used up all his means. Son of AB *TC. Old Yuan, we still can't get out? At this time, Old Yuan only had a very small trace of his soul, and he had lost contact with Gue Sanqing's body. The old turtle said, I've never been to the infinite void. This is a terrifying place. I've heard that there used to be creatures that could travel through the infinite void. However, no one has ever seen it, and no one knows. You can only wait for an opportunity. For example, in the nearby space, someone happens to open the infinite void. Otherwise, Han Fei's heart sank. Opening the infinite void and tearing the void were 2 different concepts. A Pioneer Sea Realm cultivator could open the infinite void with all his strength, but the infinite void's closing ability was very strong, and a Pioneer Sea Realm cultivator could only open it for a moment at most. Only a powerhouse who had reached the middle or late stage of the Pioneer Sea Realm or the Pioneer Sea Realm could maintain the opening of the infinite void for a long time. However, in the chaotic vast sea, there were very few such people. Han Fei asked, how long can someone like me live in the infinite void? I won't die so soon, right? I think I still have a chance. After a long time, Han Fei felt that he seemed to be in a daze, and he was about to be assimilated by the infinite void. This situation really startled Han Fei. After trying to stay awake for a long time, Han Fei seemed to be unable to bear it anymore. He shouted, fuse. At this time, he could only fuse with little black and little white to keep himself awake. However, this state didn't last long. Han Fei didn't know when he stopped fusing. His body, like a stiff corpse, drifted in the chaotic void for a long time. His consciousness was in a daze. Sometimes he seemed to pass through layers of chaotic fog. Sometimes he suddenly woke up, but then fell silent again. He had completely forgotten to use the nautical panorama. He didn't know when the Emperor Sparrow woke up, broke the barrier of Han Fei's soul sea, and appeared in this infinite void. As a result, the scene of the Emperor Sparrow carrying Han Fei through the endless void happened. But Han Fei himself didn't know. Until a certain moment, Han Fei's consciousness, which had almost completely fallen asleep, encountered a flash of white light. Chapter 2080. Pa, 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 BM. Han Fei was sleeping, but he always felt that someone was beating him. In his dream, someone was punching and kicking him and yelling at his ears. Han Fei was sleeping soundly when he slapped him in the face, thinking, "I'm going to slap you to death, you noisemaker." However, he heard a rumbling roar. "Hey, brat, how dare you fight back? Are you going to betray your master?" BM. Han Fei felt that he was beaten again. In the end, he couldn't bear it anymore and couldn't sleep anymore. He suddenly opened his eyes and yelled angrily, "Who the F CK is so unscrupulous? It's just a nap. Do you have to do that?" However, as soon as Han Fei said this, he gasped, wondering where he was. Didn't I fall into the endless void? In front of him was a forest sandbar, lush mountains and rivers, and a clear sky with white clouds. The spiritual energy here was overwhelming, and there was a lot of chaotic energy mixed with it. If Han Fei wanted to, he might be able to absorb a wisp of chaotic energy in a few days. But when he looked again, why did this place seem so familiar? In addition to the chaotic energy, he seemed to smell the aura of immortality. When Han Fei turned his head, he saw a rather familiar figure. Giant Ape? Beast King? Teacher? Seeing the grimacing Beast King, who was stretching out his big hand angrily, about to slap him again, Han Fei's heart sank. Han Fei's heart sank when he saw this, and he said mournfully, "Sure enough, I still died in the end. Bei Luo-chan, that son of 8B *TSH, actually succeeded in dragging me into the endless void. I'm hallucinating. I'm back in the 100,000 mountains." Han Fei was disappointed. So, this is the world after death? Have I fallen into the reincarnation of my memory? If that's the case, it doesn't seem unacceptable. A slap came at him with a swoosh, and Han Fei rolled on the ground for hundreds of meters, crushing the grass and trees and crushing the rocks. "Huh, it still hurts?" Han Fei said angrily. "No, I don't have this memory. When did Teacher Beast King hit me while I was sleeping?" "Sleep your ass." The Beast King howled. "Fortune favors fools. After falling into the endless void, I didn't comprehend a single thing. My divine soul nearly melted away. If it weren't for the problem with the great Tao rules of the chaotic vast sea, and the fact that the chaotic vast sea is connected to the sea realm, I wouldn't even have a F *King place to find you." Han Fei was stunned. The infinite void? When Han Fei took a closer look at the Beast King's strength, he found that it was definitely not a Beast King of the Half-King realm. This aura, this imposing manner, this pressure, heaven-opening stage definitely could not withstand it. Han Fei was dumbfounded. He looked at the Beast King in shock. After a long time, he said, "Master." The Beast King snorted and said, "You're sleeping like a pig. If I hadn't opened up the endless void passageway here to wait for you, you would have entered the true endless void by now. At that time, with your current Tao heart and will, you won't be able to hold on for long before your spirit melts into the endless void." Whoosh! Han Fei suddenly straightened his body and looked at the Beast King in shock. "Master, didn't you go east? Why are you here? Did you save me?" Then, "Master, what's your strength now?" The Beast King raised his head and unconsciously grinned. "What do you think my strength is?" Han Fei shivered. The heaven-opening stage could open up the endless void, but in fact, it couldn't be maintained for a long time, and they didn't dare to stay in the endless void. Even if they came in, they would most likely die here. The Beast King could open up the endless void passageway and wait for him. This strength was definitely not something an ordinary heaven-opening stage could achieve. Therefore, the strength of the Beast King was at least at the peak of the heaven-opening stage, Or even, Han Fei suddenly wondered how the Beast King knew that he was trapped in the endless void. Why would he wait for him at the intersection of the endless void and the sea realm? Only those who could control the dynamics of the chaotic azure sea could be in the chaotic azure sea. However, Han Fei thought of something. Maybe there was someone who could control the dynamics of this place. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the Beast King in shock. "Master, are you a martial emperor?" The Beast King grinned and said, "You're not stupid. You're much smarter than you were back then. Yes, I've been in this place for more than 60,000 years, and I've achieved immortality. How is it? Are you surprised? Are you pleasantly surprised?" Han Fei. Before Han Fei came back to his senses, the Beast King said, "No, Master. Do you mean that you've achieved immortality for 60,000 years?" The Beast King's appearance began to change, and then he turned into a brawny man with a razor head, who also looked heroic. He said, "I'm very lucky. At that time, the sea demons and even the Beast King stopped me from transcending the tribulation and becoming a Beast King. For this reason, the Giant King and the Heavenly Crystal died. The Divine Sun stopped the Beast King alone, and the Water Fairy was on another battlefield. Although I succeeded in transcending the tribulation, my strength was too low, so I was forced to go east." The Beast King rambled on and on for a long time, repeating the history that Han Fei had already heard twice. Then, it was the Beast King's own experience that Han Fei hadn't heard before. He said, "Later, it was so difficult to go east that you can't imagine. But I was very lucky. Before I went out, I encountered a battle between emperors. Do you know that? At that time, venerable sovereigns had been locked in a fierce battle. Even one venerable sovereign had fallen, and countless sea-opening realm experts had fallen. I just wanted to stay far away, but guess what? I searched in the chaotic ocean for 1,000 years, but I still couldn't find a way out. However, I found the origin sea that manifested after the emperor died." While Han Fei was fascinated, how much wealth would a venerable emperor have? Seeing Han Fei's shocked look, the Beast King said proudly, "At that time, I looked exactly like you now. Endless resources were piled up here. How could I leave? So I began to cultivate in seclusion. This seclusion lasted for 800 years. When I came out, I thought I was invincible under the heavens. At that time, I had a lot of resources and countless treasures. I was high-spirited and ready to leave this place. But," Han Fei asked, "Don't tell me you found another opportunity?" Smack, the Beast King slapped his thigh. "Of course. I never expected that a dying emperor who came out of nowhere would know that I had obtained the resources of the emperor's origin sea. When he came to find me, at that time, I hadn't opened the sky, so I didn't know anything about it. His understanding was extremely low. For this reason, I promised that person to guard this place, and he would teach me all kinds of experiences of the Pioneer Sea." Han Fei couldn't help but take a breath. "Dying emperor? Chu Hao." The Beast King immediately said, "Hey, that's him. At that time, I hadn't opened the sky. But after his analysis and explanation, it only took me less than 100 years to open the sky. I'm very talented. I'm afraid I'm the strongest heavenly talent in the history of the Beast Clan." Han Fei almost rolled his eyes. "You have the King Emperor's treasure house, endless resources, and even a venerable emperor to answer your questions. If you still haven't opened the sky, then there must be something wrong with you." The Beast King continued, "My Taoist heart is firm. I want to fight for a magnificent world for the Beast Clan. 10,000 years after the sky was opened, I reached the peak. At that time, I wanted to leave the chaotic ocean, but someone tried to attack. Do you know? If a venerable emperor wanted to attack, how could I leave? In the end, I joined hands with Chu Hao and forced the venerable emperor to retreat with the resources of the past." Han Fei couldn't help but exclaim, "You can fight a venerable emperor when you are only at the Pioneer Sea?" The Beast King said leisurely, "I have a lot of treasures, and I don't have to do it alone." Han Fei had guessed who was going to attack. Except for the Yin family, he couldn't think of anyone else. But that's not right. If the Yin family wanted to invade the chaotic Azure Sea, that should have been 100,000 years ago, right? 100,000 years ago, Xia Hongzhu and the human king went east together, and they had already provoked the infamily. But the Beast King proved his Taoism 60,000 years ago, and even Chu Hao didn't find the chaotic ocean until after the human king went east. If the infamily wanted to attack, they would have done it a long time ago. The timing didn't match the timing of the infamily's attack. Han Fei couldn't help but suspect that everything the Beast King said was right, except for the timing. Unless the one guarding the chaotic ocean wasn't the Beast King. Han Fei asked, "Master, did you establish the martial emperor's city?" The Beast King, yes. In fact, the original intention of establishing the martial emperor's city was to balance this place. The sea demons can't all die. Otherwise, how can the humans be invincible? The experts of the Merfolk royal family could not all disappear. Otherwise, other races would definitely be born. So, I want to ensure a balance between them. I want to let one or two true masters come out of the chaotic ocean. Of course, after I prove my Taoism, I also want to find the fairy and the divine sun. But I need to guard this place. Because there are strong enemies outside, I don't dare to spare any strength, so I didn't deliberately look for you. Because I know you will show up when it's time. Phew, Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Master, do you know that Master Shui Xian has died and cultivated a reincarnation?" The Beast King, when you came out of the barbaric abyss, I already knew everything I should know. Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. So, you knew the moment I appeared in the chaotic ocean? The Beast King said leisurely. Otherwise, do you think Huang Jingyuan couldn't kill you? If it weren't for the venerable emperor's will, how could you have resisted him? Han Fei, you also know about the Void Temple? The Beast King, that's the only thing Chu Hao didn't tell me. But you seem to have received the inheritance of the Void Temple. Han Fei, so you just watched me being tricked by Bei Luo Chun? The Beast King, the venerable emperor is not omnipotent. At that moment, I also relaxed. When you fell into the boundless void, I opened more than 300 exits in the entire chaotic ocean, but you didn't run into any of them. I could only wait here. Han Fei couldn't help but recall that the nautical panorama did have directions, but he only had one chance to use it. He ran as fast as he could, but he still couldn't find the exit. Han Fei finally asked, "Master, is there another venerable emperor in the chaotic ocean apart from you and Chu Hao?" This time, the Beast King couldn't help but look at Han Fei. "How did you sense it?" Han Fei couldn't help but widen his eyes. "Really?" The Beast King slightly shook his head. "I've always had a feeling that my journey has been too smooth. I've had one opportunity after another on my way to the Tao Proving Realm. I once suspected that there was someone behind all of this who was arranging things for me. But so far, I haven't found anything." Han Fei. Chapter 2081. Han Fei's guess was not wrong. Even he felt that the path of the Beast King was too smooth. It was so smooth that it made one's hair stand on end. Maybe the Beast King had also experienced a lot of things, but at least what he said was that opportunities were everywhere, waiting for him to pick them up. Although there were many opportunities in the chaotic ocean, it didn't make sense that there would be so many, right? At least, according to the Beast King's description, everything sounded reasonable, but it was very unreasonable. Han Fei thought that it would be terrible if the Beast King was possessed and his memory was also taken away, so he didn't dare to believe it completely. However, he would never show it on the surface. Since the Beast King was not malicious now, he would definitely let him go back. Once he returned to the chaotic ocean, he just needed to ask Chu Hao. Once Chu Hao confirmed the Beast King's words, there would be no problem with the Beast King. Han Fei also talked to the Beast King about the current state of the Divine Sun and the Water Fairy. When he asked about the war giants, the answer he got was that almost all the war giants were killed in the first battle against the sea demons, which made his heart sink. But thinking about it, it might be true because the population of the war giants was not large. Under the circumstances that even the Beast King had to flee to the east, the probability of them surviving was not high. After Han Fei accepted the fact that the Beast King was still alive and had become a venerable emperor, and that he was also alive and was saved by the Beast King, he couldn't help but ask, "Master, how long did I stay in the endless void?" The Beast King said, 7 days. Just 7 days? Han Fei was dumbfounded. If the Beast King didn't tell him, he would feel that he had slept for 700 years, which seemed to be a very long time. The Beast King said, it's not bad that you can hold on for 7 days. But your Taoist heart is really not good. Don't you have that nautical instrument? If you use it again, you may find a target and run out by yourself. But you didn't move for 7 days. I almost wanted to go into the endless void to find you. Han Fei couldn't help exclaiming, Master, can you enter the endless void? The Beast King snorted and said, as long as the passageway is open, it won't be a problem to stay there for a period of time. The true danger of the endless void is that it can wear away at the souls of those who enter. Those whose Tao hearts aren't strong enough will fall into a deep slumber after entering for a long time. They will feel as if their souls will be assimilated by the endless void. Han Fei nodded quickly. That's the feeling, but I feel that my belief is firm enough. Bullshit. The Beast King glanced at Han Fei contemptuously. If your Taoist heart is firm, with your strength, you can definitely stay awake for 7 days in the endless void instead of falling asleep on the first day. Hiss! Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. His Taoist heart was already so firm, but why did the Beast King say that his Taoist heart was not firm? Han Fei asked, what about those with a firm Taoist heart? How long can they last in the endless void? This time, the Beast King shook his head. You've stumped me, but I'm sure I'll be able to hold on for half a month. In the endless void, one could not feel the concept of time and space. The only thing one could feel was chaos. The endless void is the best source of chaotic energy. The best way for the heaven-opening state to absorb chaotic energy is the endless void. By accumulating a large amount of chaotic energy and slowly refining it through a cultivation method, it can be transformed into immortal spiritual energy. Is this how the heaven-opening state cultivates? Han Fei couldn't help but understand. He had been wondering why the heaven-opening state experts had so much chaotic energy in their bodies, while the venerable state, even the pioneer sea state, had pitifully little chaotic energy. Among the many kings he had killed, there were not many who had more than 10,000 wisps of chaotic energy. However, if the heaven-opening state could absorb chaotic energy so easily, it was no wonder that their combat power was abnormally strong. Seeing that Han Fei was slightly stunned, the Beast King snorted and said, this time, you've learned your lesson after suffering a loss. Although your strength is indeed not weak, your Taoist path is not firm enough. I even think that you don't understand what Taoist path you want to walk. You can't go on like this. You're strong, but the weakness of your Taoist path is too obvious. Once it's discovered, the consequences will be unpredictable. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked by the Beast King. Is it that serious? Serious? Although I haven't really been to the Sea Realm, I've intercepted countless Sea Realm experts who try to enter the chaotic vast sea. You may not believe it, but there are even some venerables whose Taoist heart is not necessarily weaker than yours. Do you know what that means? Han Fei took a deep breath. Venerables? Han Fei didn't believe it. My Taoist path is firm, and I can even preach to Xia Shaochan and the others. Why can't I? The Beast King asked, what do you think is the most important thing on the path of cultivation? Is it opportunities, talent, combat skills, cultivation methods, bloodline, or what else? Han Fei said weakly. Aren't they all important? The Beast King shook his head. Of course not. All of these are just auxiliary. Even if your bloodline is the best in the world, your Taoist heart is incomplete and you can't achieve the Taoist path. Even if you have the resources of venerable emperors for free, your Taoist heart is not enough and you can't cultivate it all. Even if one's talent was unparalleled, if one's Tao heart wasn't strong enough, others would be able to surpass one. Right now, you have the advantage of talent, luck, cultivation techniques, battle skills, but your Tao heart wasn't strong enough. If you really go to the Sea Realm and meet a real, peerless heavenly talent like you, I'm afraid you will immediately be defeated. Han Fei wanted to deny it. I'm still a disciple of the Void Temple. There are only 12 disciples in the entire Void Temple, including me. Can others accept me? However, on second thought, Han Fei realized that the Beast King's words were not without reason. At least, he said that he hadn't figured out his Taoist heart yet. In fact, he hadn't even figured out what his Taoist path was. Suddenly, Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Master, are the Taoist heart and the Taoist path the same?" The Beast King looked at Han Fei as if he were a fool. "Why would you ask such a stupid question?" Han Fei had to bite the bullet and said, "Although the question is stupid, what if it is an opportunity for me to have an epiphany?" "Huh, what do you think an epiphany is? Do you think it's that easy?" The Beast King couldn't help but shake his head. The Taoist path is the Taoist path. The Taoist path is the path you want to take. It is the direction of power you choose. Fundamentally speaking, the Taoist path belongs to the category of power. But the Taoist heart is different. The Taoist heart is the Taoist heart, and the Taoist heart is the heart toward the Tao. For the real strong, death can't stop their Taoist heart. The pain of the physical body, the lashing of the soul, and the destruction of all kinds of techniques, even if you are crushed to ashes, even if your soul is destroyed. As long as your Taoist heart is strong enough, there will be a trace of your obsession in this world. Maybe you can even have a chance to be reborn. What? Han Fei was shocked. Can I be reborn after my soul is destroyed? The Beast King said leisurely, "This is what I saw in the Emperor's handbook. Maybe it's just a guess. But the Taoist heart is the foundation of a person's strength. Right now, you have too many opportunities, too many treasures, and you are blessed with luck. These external additional forces make you extremely strong. So you have underestimated the Taoist heart, the foundation of cultivation." Han Fei couldn't help but remember when he last had an epiphany of his Taoist heart. It seemed to be in the soul-suppressing tower in the Baibei royal city. At that time, he set his sights beyond the chaotic ocean, and his goal was the infinite ocean. However, after hearing the Beast King's words, Han Fei felt that he was shouting a slogan. A slogan supported him to cultivate to the peak stage of the sea expansion realm. Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something. "Master, if my Taoist heart can't keep up, will it affect the growth of my strength?" Of course, if your Taoist heart is not strong enough, the most basic manifestation is that your will is blank and your goal is empty. This level of Taoist heart will definitely hinder the improvement of your strength. Han Fei seemed to understand. The old turtle had been emphasizing the Taoist heart to him before. He thought he had understood it, but it turned out that he had never understood it. No wonder after he reached the peak stage of the sea expansion realm, even though his cultivation arts and combat skills were among the top of the thousands of races in the vast ocean, his strength still progressed very slowly. Because of the existence of the Emperor Sparrow, Han Fei had always known that although he was very strong among his peers, he was not the strongest. However, before, Han Fei simply thought that the Emperor Sparrow was known as the strongest primeval beast because of its bloodline, which was why it was so strong. Therefore, he had been pursuing bloodlines and working hard to improve his bloodline level and life level. However, at this moment, Han Fei suddenly didn't think so. He felt that he might have understood it wrong. Maybe it wasn't the bloodline that made the Emperor Sparrow stronger, but the Taoist heart. After a while, Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Master, what is your Taoist heart?" The Beast King couldn't help but look into the distance. The beasts are withering. Even if you save some of them, they're still too few and too weak. Compared with the Beast King Valley, there are much fewer kinds of beasts. Besides, the Beast King Valley was only a tiny part of the beasts, but I've searched the entire chaotic ocean and found no beasts. It's really not a great era for the beasts. Therefore, my Taoist heart is the rise of the beasts and the longevity of the beasts. To achieve this goal, I want to prove my Taoist heart and live forever. I even want to create the strongest bloodline for the beasts. With my blood, I will start the Tao of beasts and revive the beasts. Han Fei was dumbfounded. Is your Taoist heart really that ambitious? Why don't you just say that you want to become a god? Han Fei said, "Master, I just need to be ambitious, right? Then I want to become a god." Han Fei was slapped away and rolled hundreds of times on the ground. The Beast King was speechless. "You are so unteachable. Young Wang Han is still as simple as before." Chapter 2082. If Han Fei still couldn't be alert when everyone was talking about their Dao hearts, he would be really stupid. He knew that apart from opening the sky, the most important thing for him was to find his own Dao heart. Of course, he had to go back to the chaotic ocean first. If he didn't come back, the bond established by him might not be so solid. So Han Fei said, "Master, where are we? How can I go back to the chaotic ocean?" The Beast King couldn't help glancing at Han Fei. "What? You just met me and you want to leave? Am I so unlikable?" Han Fei waved his hand and said, "Of course not. Master, I'm very happy that you are still alive. However, the order of the human race in the chaotic ocean has just been rebuilt. If I'm not here, I'm afraid others won't be able to control such a force. After all, it's all scraped together." "Humph." The Beast King sneered. "You think you are very important, don't you?" The Beast King said, "In addition to you, there are also your group of friends and your little girlfriend. They have the same problem as you." At the end of the day, his knowledge was shallow and he was too dependent on others. The only two who are not bad are the spear user and the manipulator. These two are not bad. Their Dao hearts are definitely stronger than yours. I didn't pay attention to the others, but to put it bluntly, in the chaotic ocean, there are many people whose Dao hearts are better than yours. Han Fei guessed that he was talking about Zhang Xuanyu and Luo Xiaobai. Zhang Xuanyu was the kind of person who was extremely perceptive and was very likely to establish his own sect. Luo Xiaobai was the kind of person who was extremely rational and smart enough to determine and strengthen her Dao and Dao heart. Hearing what the Beast King said, Han Fei felt it was reasonable. But it seemed that the Beast King was not going to let him go back. Han Fei asked, "Master, can you send a message to them? Tell them that I am not dead yet." The Beast King said, "Didn't you leave a rare treasure? If you're dead, how can they not know?" That's true. Since he couldn't go back, Han Fei felt that maybe it was not bad for him to break through here. Given his relationship with the Beast King, he would definitely tell him everything he knew if he asked about the way of opening the heavens. So, Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Master, well, I've almost reached the peak of the Pioneer Sea realm, and my origin sea is full, and I've felt the opportunity to open the skies several times. But teacher, I don't have any feelings for splitting open the skies. Tell me, how do people usually split open the sky? What do I need to comprehend?" The Beast King looked at him speechlessly. "I can't." The Beast King snapped. "Your Dao heart isn't strong enough, yet you want to split open the sky? Even if you manage to survive and forcefully split open the sky, there might still be problems. Your Dao heart can't bear your power at all. You'll explode." Explode. That's right. With a bang, he died and his Dao vanished like smoke. Han Fei shivered. Fortunately, he didn't blindly open the sky. Otherwise, he would be courting death. Han Fei was speechless. Even someone as petty as Bei Luochen had a firmer Dao heart than him. He had already split open the sky. So how could I be weaker than him? Han Fei was a little unconvinced. Why? If you say that Wang Yijian, that kind of ruthless sword cultivator, has a firm Dao heart, then I will believe you. However, how could Bei Luochen have a firm Dao heart? Han Fei frowned with a bitter look on his face. The Beast King couldn't help but say, "Come, do you want to fight with the creatures of the sea realm?" Han Fei was shocked. "Master, are you going to send me to the sea realm?" The corner of the Beast King's mouth rose. "There's no need to send you there. There are many people who want to enter the chaotic Azure Sea. Isn't it simple for me to casually detain a few? A few decades ago, a few alien races broke into this place, but I didn't do anything. Now, they're still trapped in a dense fog. You go and fight them. People from the sea realm." Han Fei was also shocked. He didn't expect that his first encounter with someone from the sea would be under such circumstances. Within a bewildering formation, 3 humanoid sea expansion experts were traversing through the mist. These 3 people were very similar to normal human beings. However, there were some differences. For example, their eyes were relatively big, but they didn't look cute. Instead, they looked very demonic. Their mouths were relatively large and thick, and their mouths were filled with sawtooth-like steel teeth. Of course, if you didn't open your mouth, you wouldn't be able to see it. In addition, the three of them had web hands and feet and bulging bellies. If you didn't look carefully, you would think that they were fat humans. Swish, suddenly, one of them opened his mouth, and a long tongue shot out of his mouth. The tongue reached into the sea, and a black shark that had just entered the exalted realm was swept up by him. Then, when the tongue was pulled back, the black shark's body shrank rapidly, as if it had been shrunk, and was swallowed into this person's stomach. Burp. After eating the fish, this person burped and said angrily, "It's been almost 40 years, and we still haven't found a flaw in this sea. There aren't even many decent creatures here. I'm afraid we can't go back to the Frogman tribe." Another person said, "Don't be discouraged. It's only been 40 years. It's said that humans once walked out of this area. This means that this is not an abandoned wasteland. It could be the legendary starting ground. There might be some indigenous people here. The indigenous people are the richest. If we can get some money from them, our 40 years won't be in vain." Starting ground? How dare you think about it? This area has long been listed as one of the primitive graveyards. This means that people have explored this place countless years ago. It's good enough that we can get some scraps. The three of them grumbled to each other and continued to travel through the fog. For the sea expansion realm, a mere 40 years was indeed nothing. However, what were the starting ground, chaotic wasteland, and primitive graveyards I mentioned? It was worth thinking about. Buzzing, all of a sudden, there was a fluctuation in the air. The three frogmen were all shocked. At this moment, they were not afraid of any movement, but that there would be no movement. Therefore, when the fluctuation appeared in the air, they were all shocked and immediately looked at the place where the fluctuation came from. When Han Fei appeared, he heard a burst of exclamations. He heard one of them say, "Human, it's a human, and he has reached the sea expansion realm. I knew it. This is not a wasteland or a graveyard. This place must have risen again." Seeing the three of them so happy, Han Fei couldn't help but touch his chin. It seemed that the chaotic ocean was not a good place in the eyes of the outside world. Wasteland, graveyard? Was the chaotic ocean only this level? Before Han Fei took the initiative to attack, the three people immediately surrounded Han Fei. One of them said, "Human, tell us how to get in here, and we can spare your life." Han Fei looked at them indifferently. "Why do you want to come in so badly?" Seeing that Han Fei was so calm, the three couldn't help but frown. It seemed that they couldn't protect this person. They were all at the sea expansion realm, and if they couldn't even beat a native, they might as well kill themselves. One of them snorted, "Just say it. Since you don't want to say it, let's search your soul." As he spoke, one of them suddenly attacked. This person was extremely fast, and his feet cracked the void. But the void was not broken, which meant that the space strength of this place was far higher than that of the chaotic ocean. However, it wasn't much higher. This person used the broken thorn, and his speed was extremely fast. Han Fei estimated that this person's instantaneous speed was almost as fast as Xia Xiaochan's. This meant that this person's understanding of speed was more profound than that of the chaotic ocean, and the power that the thorn burst out was not weak either. It burst out at the same time with the power of the Golden Age Qi, which was mixed with the power of the chaotic ocean and the power of the Great Path. Han Fei felt that this attack was comparable to Zhang Xuanyu's heaven-knocking gate. Han Fei thought, are all the people in the sea realm so strong? A random sea expansion realm cultivator could snatch it to this extent, using the chaotic Qi at will. Han Fei directly reached out to grab that person. This scene stunned the three frogman powerhouses. Was this person really that generous? You're just a sea expansion realm cultivator. How dare you grab my attack? However, the result also horrified the three of them. Han Fei blocked the blow with his palm, clenched the sharp thorn backhandedly, and slashed out with the Tao Convergence sword in his other hand. BEM, the frogman powerhouse, was instantly blasted into smithereens. However, this explosion didn't turn him into dust. Instead, there was still flesh and blood. Han Fei could feel the power of this attack. This person's strength had probably reached more than 240,000 waves, and his body was also quite strong. Although he wasn't as strong as the top 10 on the sea expansion list, he wasn't far from it. Is this the power of a random sea expansion realm cultivator from a sea realm? Han Fei was shocked. If this was the case, how strong would the heavenly talents of the sea realm be? Han Fei was shocked, but the frogman was also shocked. This was just the land of the natives. How could the sea expansion realm cultivator be so strong? The person who was blown up by Han Fei was regenerating quickly. The other two rushed at Han Fei at the same time. One of them stirred up a huge wave and rushed at Han Fei, while the other seemed to be walking on the path of strength. He took out a small seal and smashed it at Han Fei. Bam! Bam! Han Fei punched out with both hands, smashing the wave and sending the small seal flying. With a thought, the three people were sealed by the time barrier. They couldn't even escape. How is this possible? You're not a native. You're definitely not a native. Han Fei's pressure descended. His blood soared into the sky, and his murderous intent directly pressed the three of them to the point where they could hardly move. Chapter 2083. These three frogmen from the sea realm didn't expect that there would be such a terrifying overlord in this wasteland. Under Han Fei's terrifying pressure, the blood in their bodies boiled, and their will almost manifested. The three of them looked at each other and burned their blood almost at the same time. The chaotic energy in their bodies burned wildly. Under Han Fei's pressure, they stood up bit by bit. Han Fei couldn't help but frown. With his current strength, he was only in the pioneer sea realm in the chaotic vast ocean. It was almost impossible to find someone who could rival him. At such a close distance, under his pressure, the three of them actually resisted, which surprised Han Fei greatly. Immediately, Han Fei unleashed his full power. He didn't believe he couldn't suppress these three people. However, when Han Fei unleashed his full power, the three people also began to use secret methods, trying to break free from Han Fei's suppression. At that moment, the three people took out their weapons at the same time, which were all ultra-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasures. Even if they had to die together, they had to seriously injure Han Fei and create a chance for themselves to escape. The detonation of three ultra-quality, sea-quelling bizarre treasures. They broke through the time barrier and indeed pushed Han Fei back. Han Fei was even injured. There were hundreds of cuts on his body, and his internal organs were shaken. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. But the three people were actually in a worse state. Their bodies were broken, and they had to spend a huge amount of energy to rebuild their bodies. Even so, they were still seriously injured. The three people thought they could push Han Fei back by detonating their weapons. At this moment, they were trying to escape together. They swam in the void, and their speed soared to the level of 100,000 miles in a second. This kind of speed reached a terrifying level of nearly 300,000 miles in a second. Swish, however, Han Fei certainly wouldn't let them escape. With a golden leap, he stood in front of the three people. He slashed with the Yin-Yang reincarnation knife and killed one of the guys who hadn't recovered yet. Boom! Above the sky, a crack of the Grand Tao flashed and disappeared. Maybe this was already the edge of the chaotic vast ocean, so the scale of a natural phenomenon was much smaller than in the chaotic vast ocean. One frogman died, and the other two immediately retreated. One of them yelled, "We can't stop him. This man walks on the Grand Tao of time and is too strong. Today, we're doomed. But no matter what, I'm not willing to die like this." Burning Meridian, giant frog battle physique. When Han Fei saw this, he couldn't help but be moved. This person had actually burned all of his meridians, including his soul, flesh, blood, bones, and chaotic energy. In any case, his body had suddenly doubled in size, and his strength had actually doubled. This person used his arm as a blade and slashed at Han Fei. Han Fei couldn't help but be amazed. This power was already comparable to 90% of his power before he activated his Great Path. This made him feel both shocked and longing. If any king in the sea realm was this strong, then what level would he be at if he went? Of course, in the face of this person's attack, Han Fei didn't hold back. He stretched out two fingers backhandedly, and the Tao Convergence sword instantly defeated this person and completely annihilated him. At this moment, the great Tao crack had just appeared, and the last remaining frogman tried to self-destruct. But how could Han Fei allow that? The void lines were already prepared, and when they saw this, they immediately went over. However, with a bang, the man still blew himself up. Even two of Han Fei's void lines were shattered, and his soul was slightly damaged. Han Fei couldn't help but frown, and his face became serious. Why did this happen? At this moment, the Beast King appeared beside Han Fei and said lightly, "What did you feel?" Han Fei said, "Very strong. If most of the Pioneer Sea Realm cultivators in the outside world are this strong, I'm afraid few of the kings in the chaotic vast sea can be regarded as heavenly talents." The Beast King said, "Do you know why you can't control this person's soul?" Han Fei looked at the Beast King in surprise, but then he understood. After all, the Beast King had already achieved immortality. If he couldn't even see through the void lines, how could he be called a venerable emperor? Han Fei shook his head. He didn't understand this either. The Beast King said, because of his Taoist heart. His Taoist heart was very strong. Even if he died, he didn't want to be controlled by you. So he self-destructed, and your Taoist heart is not strong enough. Otherwise, he would never have had a chance to self-destruct. At this time, the Beast King chuckled. Now you know the problem with your Taoist heart, right? It's not enough to fight with nothing. The Taoist heart is the foundation of a cultivator. Hearing the Beast King's words, Han Fei was depressed. But the three of them were indeed not weak. Unfortunately, Han Fei had planned to capture another person and search his soul. He did not expect the other party to be able to resist the control of the void lines. If it were before, Han Fei would have thought that the quality of the void lines couldn't keep up. But now, Han Fei knew that the reason for the problem was that he didn't know enough about the Taoist heart. Han Fei asked, "Master, you haven't been to the outside world yet?" The Beast King shook his head. The outside world is very dangerous. There are even venerable sovereigns coveting the chaotic vast sea. I do want to go, but it's just as you can see. Every few days, someone would barge in. I could have just left, but all of this was with the intention of hunting this place. If they really come in, how much trouble do you think it will cause? The Beast King said, "Now, I will give you two choices. One is to go to the Oceanic Realm. One was to return to the chaotic Azure Sea. There are many benefits in the Oceanic Realm. Your vision, knowledge, comprehensive strength, combat techniques, and even resources will be improved. Of course, it will be more dangerous. When you return to the chaotic Azure Sea, what you need to consider is not your strength, but your Taoist heart. It's up to you to choose." Han Fei took a deep breath. Without thinking too much, he said frankly, "I'll go back to the chaotic Azure Sea." How many races were there in the chaotic Azure Sea? How many races were there in the Oceanic Realm? The Oceanic Realm was so big that if he went there, he would not be able to come back in a short time. And he still had a lot of things to do in the chaotic Azure Sea. The inner area had not been solved, the heavenly desolate city had not been rebuilt, and Sherpa Huang had not been killed. Besides, since there were still flaws in his cultivation, it was even more inappropriate for him to advance rashly. The Oceanic Realm was a place he would go eventually, so there was no hurry. Seeing that Han Fei was quite calm at this moment, the Beast King couldn't help but nod slightly. "At least you know your limits. You should take a good look at yourself now. If you choose to go to the Oceanic Realm, I will be disappointed." Han Fei asked, "Master, how do I go back?" The Beast King said leisurely, "Don't you have that nautical globe? Why do you need me to teach you when you go back?" The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. He thought to himself that it was fine. Anyway, he would have to come out again. However, it was not easy for him to meet the Beast King, who was already an emperor. If he didn't take any benefits, wouldn't he be a little stupid? So Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Master, do you have anything to teach me?" Bam! The Beast King slapped Han Fei directly into the bottom of the sea with a backhand and cursed, "You are so unteachable. Do you still need anything? You are so rich. Do you still need anything?" The Beast King was so angry that he left, but he also left a mark, which was the way back. He knew that Han Fei had entered someone else's sea of source, and the resources of the three people who had just died were left to Han Fei. Han Fei sighed. Fine, I won't give it to you. Why did you hit me? Why are you so angry? After a moment, Han Fei appeared in the Sea of Source of one of the frogmen. When he entered the Sea of Source, he was shocked to find that this frogman Sea of Source had been developed for more than 60,000 kilometers, but the resources were distributed within less than 20,000 kilometers, which was much less than Han Fei's. As for the chaotic energy, there were surprisingly more than 50,000 strands, and this was the result of using up a lot of it after the last outbreak. The other two Sea of Source were about 50,000 kilometers wide, which also had less resources but more chaotic energy. In terms of the size of the Sea of Source, these frogmen Sea of Source were larger than those kings in the chaotic ocean. Obviously, the resources they obtained were mainly used to expand the Sea of Source, so the number of resources in the Sea of Source was not enough. However, Han Fei was sure that in the Sea realm, the source of chaotic energy was definitely much easier than in the chaotic ocean. Just these 3 people alone, he had obtained more than 140,000 strands of chaotic energy. If he were in the chaotic Azure Sea, he would probably have to kill at least 20 kings to get this number. 1 year later, in the outer sea of the chaotic ocean, in the human gathering place. Now, Han Fei's disappearance didn't cause the gathered immortal palaces to separate again, because people found that when the immortal palaces gathered together, the relationship between them became more harmonious. Whether it was trade, resources, or their own forces, they were stronger than ever since the end of days. Among the many immortal palaces, the only one that was missing was the Yin Yang Heaven. Because Han Fei was not there, no one could control the Yin Yang Palace. However, many people from the Yin Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven came to the outer sea to study. Even the overall strength of the Yin Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven was improving by leaps and bounds. However, the cultivators of the Yin Yang Heaven dabbled in all kinds of arts and techniques, which were originally from the Yin Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven. Therefore, they needed to communicate and learn from other immortal palaces. And those immortal palaces that had disappeared in the early years, after feeling the harmonious environment in the outer sea, were all tempted. One after another, the lost immortal palaces returned. Less than a month after the Flying Feather Heaven and the Lawless Heaven returned, the population here increased by 1/10, all from other immortal palaces. The 36 Xiantian heavens gathered in the academies under the good immortal palaces, but the admission requirements were too difficult. Besides, now that the immortal palaces gathered, the population turnover was too high, and the number of students was easily full. When the Flying Feather Heaven and the Lawless Heaven returned, there were naturally many people who came. The 2 immortal palaces, which had a relatively small population to begin with, were naturally happy to accept these people to settle down. In a place called Moonlight Town in the Flying Feather Heaven, a young cultivator traveled here, built a thatched hut on the edge of the cliff, and planted a yard less than a kilometer. After finishing his work, he lay under the moonlight and fell asleep. Chapter 2084. Without Han Fei, the life of the human race had to go on. A race would not easily fall into desolation because of the disappearance of a powerhouse. In particular, Han Fei had created a prosperous era for the human race. Although Han Fei didn't think this was the golden age. After Han Fei disappeared, the Sword God Palace brought the glazed sky, the greater darkness sky, and the immeasurable sky out of the sea region where they were, and joined forces with the falling dragon sky, forming an opposition to the inner region. Because of Han Fei's incarnation, the Emperor Snail temporarily left the land of origin and quietly guarded the sea near the human settlement. Most importantly, in just a few decades, Han Fei's Zhangdakian had grown too fast and had now stepped into the Venerable Realm. As soon as he entered the Venerable Realm, Han Fei's strength became extremely powerful. Now that the Demomonarch realm was out of the picture, few of the almighty beasts could defeat him. As a top heavenly talent of the giant beast lineage, in the Emperor of Snail's opinion, it would be best if Han Fei's main body died. The main body fell, and the avatar arose. Obviously, Han Fei's octopus incarnation was very talented. In the future, he would definitely become a top talent of the giant beast clan, and his strength couldn't be weaker than Tai Yuan's. This was the behemoth bloodline's treasure. 12 years after the immortal palaces of the outer domain gathered. Now, in all the major palaces, streets and alleys, even children a few years old, all knew Han Fei's name. It was even because Han Fei's expedition had caused too much noise. After his return, the kings were unable to account for it, so they wrote Han Fei as a heroic figure. Although no statues were erected in the various palaces, they still wrote about him. The name of the human king was known by everyone. For example, even the children on the roadside could read aloud. Who is to blame for the collapse of the human race? The outer lands are disliked by the inner lands. 100 demons bully us for having no emperor to disturb the human world for 100,000 years. Human king is not afraid of wind and rain. The gathering immortal palace is here. The long journey to death. Human king splits the sky in anger. A poor hero is full of hardships. The void is endless. My king is trapped. I only hope that when the vault of heaven opens, the appearance of the king of man. At the peak of the mountain in that battle, only 2 people could leave behind a nursery rhyme. One was Han Fei, who sighed for the hero. As for Wang Yijian's words, there were also many yearning, such as, Wang Yijian, Wang Yijian. One sword to kill an emperor. Who can predict a human sword immortal? Today was a special day. Back then, when the immortal palaces gathered, there was no leader. There was not a single person who could oversee this place. Because the yin-yang heaven didn't have a successor, in the end, the 9 palace heaven appeared. With Han Xian's strength, he oversaw this place, and now he was the leader of the outer domain. The reason why today was a special day was because Han Xian was going to split open the sky. Han Xian had become a king for 100,000 years, and his strength had already reached the peak of sea opening realm. However, after the battle with the 100-demon tribe, he suddenly understood something. He realized that the problem was that he was too all-round, but he didn't have the strongest Tao. According to the logic of a normal person, Han Xian would definitely have to choose the most suitable path from the various grand Taos that he dabbled in, and it was the path that he should take the most. However, Han Xian didn't understand. Since he was walking on the path of omnipotence, why didn't he carry it forward? If he reached the heaven-opening realm, he would also be an expert among them. At that time, his strength wouldn't be any different from sea expansion. He would be incomparably powerful. Of course, it was not just his understanding of the battle with the 100-demon tribe that inspired him to split open the sky. Instead, he watched helplessly as Han Xian disappeared in front of him. This was Han Guanshu's only son in this world, his only nephew, but he couldn't take good care of him. This was the fundamental motivation for Han Xian to split open the sky. At this moment, above the 9 palace heaven, the mighty thunderbolts had struck 7 times. Unlike the heavenly tribulation of becoming a king, the heavenly tribulation of splitting open the sky itself was actually not so ridiculously strong. The key to splitting open the sky was enlightenment, and the heavenly tribulation could be forcibly passed. The kings didn't know what Han Xian had comprehended, but when the 8th heavenly tribulation came, thousands of strange Daos suddenly burst out of Han Xian's body. At this moment, the kings were horrified. Even Luo Xiaobai and the others seemed to understand something. Han Xian had walked on thousands of Daos at once. This was the only person in the history of the human race who had walked on so many Daos and could still pass the heavenly tribulation here. It was reasonable to say that if a person walked on one Dao to the end, he would be equally powerful. And if one walked on thousands of Daos, it was impossible to be proficient in all of them. In fact, it was very likely that one would go crazy and have no hope of splitting open the sky for the rest of his life. However, at this time, the difference between a wise man and an ordinary person was revealed. Han Xian could create the 1,000 trickeries divine and ghost disc and build the internal comprehensive trial field of the 9 palace heaven, which showed how intelligent he was. Therefore, others didn't dare to leave, but Han Xian drove them away, and he left without scruples. It was as if he knew there was a tiger in the mountain, but he still went to the tiger's mountain. The purpose of the heavenly tribulation was to split open the sky. Therefore, The kings watched to see how the heavenly tribulation was going to split open the sky. In the sky of the nine-palace heaven, in a remote place, there were actually many venerables watching. However, what could the venerables understand? It might be just for the atmosphere of splitting open the sky. Even if they couldn't understand it, they could still witness the grand feat of splitting open the sky. Unlike the inner periphery, where there were only pioneer sea realm powerhouses, in the periphery, there were countless venerables. Almost all the venerables of the foreign domain of the human race had come. Among these venerables, a venerable with messy hair and a big beard, holding a green wine gourd in his hand, was also watching this scene. Gulp, the sloppy man, casually took a sip of wine, and the smell of the wine attracted the surrounding venerables subconsciously to stay away. Of course, there were also many venerables who liked to drink. Several men came over. "Brother, your wine is very strong. Why don't you have a taste?" The sloppy man smiled. "It's not easy to make wine. What should I drink?" "Hey, we are all fellow Taoists. What's wrong with a sip of wine?" The sloppy man scoffed. "Go buy it yourself." "Oh no." The sloppy man turned over, leaned in the air, and squinted at the sky. The venerables who came to ask for wine naturally didn't waste time on Han Xian, but focused on watching Han Xian's tribulation. At this moment, behind the crowd, a group of female venerables came over. Someone smiled and said, "It's the female cultivators of Fan Yin Tian and the Hundred Flowers Palace. How delicious!" Someone sighed. "It's a pity that there are too few female venerables. It's really difficult to find someone to dual cultivate with." Someone said, "Hey, I heard that a peerless heavenly talent of Fan Yin Tian has cultivated the book of Sanskrit and mastered it in only 7 days. Is it that woman?" Someone glanced at the person who spoke with disdain. "Nonsense. You didn't even know Jiuyin Ling? Fan Yin Tian is now a hot heavenly talent. It's said that there are more than 1,000 venerables chasing after her. The top heavenly talents of the major palaces are all fascinated by her, but she doesn't like any of them. TSK, TSK. Someone sighed. "It's a pity that I won't get a share." Someone sneered. "Eat sh*T. I heard that this woman is even more talented than Bingxue Chuling. After the expedition, she broke through 3 realms in 1 day, setting the fastest cultivation speed of a venerable." You, who are you?" The venerables next door were chatting, but when Fan Yin Tian and the Hundred Flowers Palace walked together, these useless venerables were all stunned as they watched these female cultivators pass by. However, among these people, only the sloppy man was indifferent. He was half lying in the void, drinking hard liquor. When Jiuyin Ling passed by this place, she couldn't help but be attracted by the wine gourd in the sloppy man's hand. However, the appearance of the gourd seemed different from what she remembered, and the smell of alcohol wasn't right. If it were him, he wouldn't drink such inferior liquor. "Linger, do you know this person?" Jiuyin Ling frowned slightly. She couldn't see the sloppy man's eyes clearly, but both his temperament and body movements were very different. She couldn't help but shake her head slightly. If it was Han Fei, why would he be among the venerables? Even if he didn't look for her, he should have gone to Xia Xiaochan and the others. The female venerable next to Jiuyin Ling said, "Let's go. Come closer. This is a grand event. We can't miss it." "Okay." After Jiuyin Ling left, the sloppy man slightly smiled, and warmly said in a low voice, "Not bad." The strange phenomena displayed by cultivating 10,000 Daos at the same time were indeed extraordinary. Suddenly, when the 8th heavenly tribulation arrived, purple lightning fell from the sky. Most people looked at the purple lightning in the sky, but only the sloppy man slightly narrowed his eyes and looked at the purple glow in the void. Primordial violet chi? When Han Fei saw the primordial violet chi, he suddenly grinned, thinking that the tribulation was a sure thing. In the process of opening the sea to opening the sky, there's a very short process where one could obtain the primordial violet chi. It was not only the source of power transformation for the sky creator. However, once the primordial violet chi appeared, it meant that Han Xian's strength had been rapidly improving, and his origin sea might have been rapidly expanding. It was almost a certainty that he would be able to open the sky, unless the heavenly tribulation could shatter the Qianji godly ghost disc. However, that was almost impossible. Others might not know, but how could Han Fei not know that the Qinji godly ghost disc had a fifth form? Gulp, Han Fei drank a mouthful of hard liquor and slightly smiled. He said casually, "Uncle Xian, congratulations." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone looked up at the sky in shock. The unkempt figure had already left quietly. Zhou Ling, who was also looking up at the sky, suddenly felt as if she had lost something. She suddenly turned around and looked at the direction where the sloppy man was, only to find that he was nowhere to be seen. Zhou Ling had no time to care about the ceremony and immediately turned back. She scanned the surroundings with her perception, but she couldn't find the man at all. Behind her, a female venerable chased after her. "Ling, who are you looking for?" For these people, they had already forgotten the sloppy man just now. But Zhou Ling was different. Her body trembled slightly. "He's back." Chapter 2085. Han Xian's opening of the skies signified the rise of the outer realms. With a heaven-opening expert overseeing the outer realms would have a backbone. Except for Zhou Ling, no one realized that Han Fei had probably returned. Even Xia Xiaochan and Luo Xiaobai didn't know the news. Time passed quickly. The alliance of the outer realms slowly began to show the advantages of the human race's unification. As for Luo Xiaobai, she had gone to the 100 Flowers Palace to cultivate. It was said that her strength had increased rapidly, and she had begun to stand out amongst the sea expansion realm. Xia Xiaochan returned to the mermaid royal family and was said to be cultivating in seclusion. Zhang Xuanyu spent most of his time in the Nine Palace Sky, and he had already gone through most of the trials in the Nine Palace Sky. Lu Rinquang went to the Behemoth clan, but he didn't embark on the Behemoth divine path. It was just that his heaven-devouring power and the cultivation of the Behemoth clan had a mutual effect. In the blink of an eye, 23 years had passed. Lawless Sky, Moonlight Town. No matter which world it was, the lives of the lowest class of humans were actually the most colorful. There were many things they needed to care about. Especially in villages and towns, ordinary people's lives were mainly about fishing or trials. After the major immortal palaces moved together, all kinds of new projects began to be built because of the urban agglomeration. Naturally, teleportation arrays connecting the major cities of the major immortal palaces were indispensable. As for the division of the fishery, in addition to the previous way, each family circled a piece of land, divided into several levels of fishery, and planned dangerous areas. He also established a unified super fishery for some talented people. These people would usually arrange experts to follow and protect them. In the town where Han Fei was, the minimum requirement to be selected as a talented person was a teenager with a spiritual heritage of level 5. If he was only at level 5, but his spiritual beast was not good enough, he was not qualified for the selection of outstanding talents. The corner of the village where Han Fei was located was next to the Moonlight Monastery of the 5th Academy in Moonlight Town. In the evening, carrying the fishing rod in his left hand and the gourd in his right, Han Fei was walking home. It just so happened that the Moonlight Cultivation Academy's break day arrived. Countless youths rushed out. Their favorite day was a break day. When they brushed shoulders with Han Fei, they would always say hello to him. A young man asked, "Uncle Gio, did you catch anything good today?" Han Fei smacked his lips and said, "No, I only got 2 blue lobsters." A youth smiled and said, "Uncle Gio, you must have sold the goods and exchanged them for wine, right?" The group of youths laughed. They were already familiar with this routine. Han Fei had lived near the academy for more than 30 years. He had always been a hidden fisher and hadn't made any progress after such a long time. In the years since Han Fei moved here, even in the Moonlight Cultivation Academy, there had been many young powerhouses, many of whom were law enforcers, and some of the heavenly talents had even become explorers. Nowadays, the human settlement was filled with spiritual energy and the environment was friendly. It was relatively easy to cultivate, and the growth of young people was always very fast. The hidden fisher realm was actually not weak for the ordinary people in the town, but each generation was stronger than the previous one. Everyone still looked down on Han Fei's strength, and didn't fear Han Fei, so they often teased Han Fei. However, these teenagers didn't hate Han Fei, because they all wanted to have a sip of Han Fei's wine. Although Han Fei used all the fishing resources to exchange for wine, it was not a big deal. But it was said that the wine Han Fei exchanged for was of a high grade. For ordinary teenagers, a sip was at least equivalent to dozens of days of cultivation. Therefore, there were often people carrying seafood and running to exchange for wine with Han Fei. Of course, the probability of their success was not high, because if they wanted to go to Han Fei's place to exchange for wine, they had to fight with Han Fei, and they had to last more than 5 minutes. At first, everyone thought that a drunkard would be easy to beat. However, later they realized that a drunkard who had been a hidden fisher for so many years was also a peak-level hidden fisher. It was very difficult for them to fight with him at the same realm. However, every day, there were still students who were tirelessly beaten up by him. It was said that in the past 30 years, a total of 28 students had drunk wine with Han Fei, an average of less than 1 per year. One of the teenagers said, "Uncle Gio, I heard that the idiot went to fight with you today. Teach him a good lesson. I've been annoyed with him for a long time." Someone echoed, "Yes, teach him a good lesson." Gulp. Han Fei raised his head and took a sip of wine. Got it. The idiot these teenagers were talking about was a sword maniac. He had been challenging Han Fei for more than half a year and had not won even once. As for why he was a sword maniac, it was because he yearned for Wang Yijian, who was his greatest idol. This kid was determined to become a man like Wang Yijian. After a moment, Han Fei saw a boy standing outside his courtyard with a wooden sword in his hand. The reason why the boy insisted on using a wooden sword was that he was afraid of hurting Han Fei. But in fact, one of his wooden swords was broken every day. When the boy saw Han Fei return, he immediately shouted, "Uncle Gio, I'm here again. I'm here to challenge you. Today, I've learned a unique skill. I can definitely defeat you." Hee burp, Han Fei grinned. "I'm tired of hearing you learn a unique skill every day. Come on, I'll eat after the fight." When the boy heard this, he said with a sullen face, "Uncle Gio, no matter who the enemy is, you should face your opponent. You're making me lose face." Bah, Han Fei scolded. "You still have face? You can't even beat me, and you still want to be a sword cultivator like Wang Yijian?" When the boy heard this, he was suddenly unhappy. "Uncle Gio, you can't call the sword immortal by his name. Forget it, come on. Today, you can experience the horror of a sword cultivator." He put the fishing rod and gourd outside the courtyard, waved his hand, and grabbed a knife. "Come on, hurry up, don't delay my meal." When the boy heard this, his face immediately became serious, and the wooden sword in his hand flew. Seeing this scene, Han Fei immediately shook his head slightly. What shall we show? However, the next moment, the boy's strength exploded, and he pushed the hilt of the sword with one hand. The sword was like a swimming snake, twisting in the air and stabbing at Han Fei. Han Fei had long been used to such fancy moves. He casually slashed down with the knife. Yes, it was pure slashing. However, to Han Fei's surprise, when Han Fei saw this slash, the corners of the boy's mouth curled up, and the swimming snake's sword suddenly shrank. The boy grabbed it, and it became a simple straight stab. When he saw this stab, Han Fei knew that the boy had indeed comprehended something. His attack was no longer fancy, but became simple. A stab was a stab. That stab was a combination of strength, focus, and sharpness. Because Han Fei only used the strength of an ordinary hidden fisher, when it collided with the wooden sword exploded with a bang. However, the boy's hand that was holding the sword did not tremble. Instead, when Han Fei's knife fell, he stabbed straight at Han Fei, even though there was only the sword hilt left. Seeing this, even though Han Fei had 100 million ways to block it, he did not do it. He let the sword hilt press against his body. However, in the boy's opinion, victory or defeat was decided in an instant. It must be because Uncle Gio had not reacted yet. "Ha! I won. The boy was ecstatic for a moment, but he immediately stopped smiling and straightened his face again. We sword cultivators will not be proud of 1 or 2 victories. Uncle Gio, you are a worthy opponent. Han Fei thought to himself, this is probably the best sword cultivator in history who can brag with a straight face. He is long-winded, stubborn, and fantasizes all day long. However, he had to admit that this boy was quite persistent about sword Dao. Although Han Fei looked down on him, this boy's strength was actually very high in the Moonlight Cultivation Academy. He could be ranked in the top 100. However, if it weren't for the fact that his spiritual beast was an ordinary sword turtle, he could actually be included in the list of key cultivators. Gulp! Han Fei casually raised the gourd, took a sip, and then threw the gourd over. Only one sip is allowed. The boy was overjoyed. He finally got to drink Uncle Joe's wine. His goal was no longer to drink, but to treat it as an honor. He thought that he had worked so hard for so long and finally got to drink it. Of course, he had to vent. So he opened his mouth and took a big gulp. Before he could continue, he found that the gourd in his hand was gone. Then he heard Han Fei curse. Reincarnation of a drunkard. Drinking so much is a waste of good stuff, isn't it? Burp, the boy didn't take it seriously and just said, Uncle Gio, let me tell you, as a person, you have to have some goals. It's useless for you to just be a hidden fisher. Well, you have to have ambition. Fambusi, will eventually, burp, eventually, one sword, beam. The young man fell to the ground with a thud and fell into a deep sleep. Han Fei shook his head slightly and hooked his finger. The boy had already fallen asleep on a vegetable field in the courtyard. His skin turned reddish-brown, and his whole body was smoking. Spiritual energy was pouring into his body. Of course, this phenomenon was stopped by the restriction of the small courtyard. Han Fei smacked his lips and said, Do I need you to teach me? Han Fei didn't even cook. He directly lay down on the recliner, hung the gourd on the edge of the chair, and fell asleep. At midnight, Han Fei raised his eyes slightly. Fan Busi had made a breakthrough, and a small sword appeared between his eyebrows. How stubborn. What's so good about sword cultivation? At that moment, Han Fei's perception swept across the entire Moonlight Town. In fact, he didn't do this kind of thing often. He just wanted to take a look when he was in the mood. A small town with a population of more than 12 million. Han Fei found that those who were still at home, whether they were teenagers, adults, or old people, were all cultivating. Those who were really sleeping were less than 1 in 10,000. Han Fei couldn't help but think, why is everyone working hard to cultivate? Han Fei glanced at Fambusi and couldn't help but ask, Boy, if one day you really kill an emperor with one sword, what else will you pursue? Han Fei directly asked Fambusi's soul, even though his soul was in a state of confusion. But he could also listen to the most real feelings in his heart. Fambusi seemed to say in a dream, Of course, I want to be like the emperor, to help the world, to open up the sky and the sea for the human race, and to fight for a bright world. Han Fei couldn't help but feel refreshed. After a pause, he laughed and scolded. So, don't you still worship me the most? Chapter 2086. Fambusi's words touched Han Fei's heart. He had become the king that others wanted to see. However, Han Fei knew that he wasn't. Therefore, Fambusi's words didn't resonate with Han Fei. Fambusi made a breakthrough. He thought that he was too excited yesterday and made a breakthrough. And Han Fei, as usual, worked at sunrise and rested at sunset. However, soon Han Fei left the Moonlight Town. Because he had stayed here for too long, the teachers and students of the Moonlight Monastery basically all knew him. The main reason was that Fambusi actually comprehended sword intent and formed a sword ball after drinking a mouthful of enlightenment wine. In order to avoid being associated with him, Han Fei moved to a small place called the Bright Moon Village in the Moonlight Town. And this time, Han Fei was no longer a sloppy man, but a captain of the sea patrol team in the Bright Moon Village. He was responsible for leading the patrol mission in the sea area of the Bright Moon Village. This time, Han Fei changed his face again, replaced by a strong man with a strong back and a bear's waist. After all, he was a captain and he had to be able to control people. Because Han Fei was in charge of the ordinary fishery, the level 1 fishery, and the level 2 fishery, he was used to seeing life and death, even though he was a king and could save anyone in danger with a single thought. However, this was the rule of the world. Ordinary people were always like this. Every day, some people died, some people made breakthroughs, some people were happy, and some people were sad. Some people were rising, and some people were falling. Without the warning of those who died to the world, how could there be generation after generation of strong people who persistently cultivated and made breakthroughs? However, because Han Fei's position was a very important person in charge, he had to deal with a lot of things every day. There was a fight in a place, and someone was looking for him. Someone had an accident in the fishery, and someone was looking for him. Someone's seafood was sold at a low price, and someone was cheated, and he had to be responsible for investigating. What's more, the order of the entire Bright Moon Town port was set by him. Han Fei sought the truth in the world of mortals, so he should accept everything he encountered. Whether it was a life or death event, or a trivial matter, it was a matter. However, Han Fei had once been the lord of a city, built the City of Justice, and managed the Scattered Stars Island. So, he had done everything very well with his best efforts, even the trivial things. One day, the village leader of the Bright Moon Village led a group of heavenly talents to the comprehensive fishery in a human gathering place. They were attacked by mess-swallowing worms and almost died on the spot. Han Fei was appointed as the acting village leader of the Bright Moon Village. In fact, with Han Fei's reputation in the Bright Moon Village, it would only take him a few years to become the acting village leader. Woo! Of course, Han Fei was not called Han Fei now, but Han Yi. A pseudonym was meaningless to Han Fei. He could see in the dark, so he took it casually. This year was the 38th year since Han Fei left the Moonlight Town. One day after Han Fei became the village leader for a full 24 years, a young girl came to the Moonlight Town to practice asceticism. The human settlement had a population of trillions, and there were simply too many people who trained in the mortal world. However, under normal circumstances, few of them would put themselves in a very low position. Even if there were, they would pass by in a hurry and would not stay for too long, because most of the people who trained in the mortal world wanted to experience the world. Moonlight Town. The moment the young girl set foot in the Moonlight Town, she came to the house that Han Fei had abandoned in the past. She was very familiar with the structure of this kind of building, from the window format to the indoor layout to the farming method outside the courtyard. The corners of the young girl's mouth curled up slightly. Quietly, she had come here. No one had been in this house for several years. Besides, there was a small tomb in the yard, which made the young girl quite confused. But she didn't think too much and stayed here. One day, half a month later, the young girl was setting up a barbecue grill and carefully putting some minced garlic on the barbecue. At this moment, suddenly, a young man with a sword on his back stood at the door of the yard, frowning at the young girl. "Who are you?" The young girl was slightly taken aback. People came and went every day, but she had never seen anyone come here. She didn't expect that someone would come today. The young girl said, "Is this your house?" The young man shook his head. "No, but this is my friend's yard." The young girl's eyes lit up. "Oh, your friend?" The young girl couldn't help but look at the tomb in the yard. The young man froze and shrugged helplessly. "I don't know. He's probably dead, but I owe this friend of mine a favor. Every year, I come here to bring him a pot of wine." The young girl grinned. "He likes to drink." The young man couldn't help but laugh. "He loves wine, and the gourd never leaves him. Maybe for him, it's the bliss of the world." With that, the young man came to the center of the vegetable field in the yard, took out a wine gourd, and sprinkled the strong wine in front of the grave. This person, of course, was Fan Busi. Fan Busi said, "If you have nowhere to go, you can stay for a few more days, but remember to help clean up the house when you leave." The young girl replied, "Okay, what did this friend of yours do for you?" Fan Busi was a bit talkative. Seeing that someone wanted to ask, he immediately said, "It's a long story. My friend was my teacher and friend. It was because of him that I firmly embarked on the path of swordsmanship. He was invincible among the hidden fishers. At first, I just wanted a sip of the wine in his gourd, but later, I didn't want to drink anymore. He was my goal to defeat. Unfortunately, not long after I defeated him, something happened to him." "Alas," the young girl asked, "how do you know something happened to him?" Fan Busi said with a smile. He didn't have any goals. He went fishing every day in exchange for wine. He either died in the process of fishing or drank himself to death. Either way, it's not bad. However, I finally drank a mouthful of his wine. You might not believe it if I tell you, but on that day my mind was clear, and on the second day, I broke through. In 3 months, I comprehended sword intent. Now, I'm one step closer to my goal. The young girl was puzzled. Your goal? Fan Busi chuckled. Don't laugh at me if I tell you. The young girl shook her head slightly. Everyone has a goal, and I also have an unrealistic goal. Fan Busi said in surprise. Really? My goal is to become a being like Master Sword Immortal one day. Being able to kill an emperor with one sword is my greatest pursuit. The young girl's hand that was brushing the sauce trembled, but then she said, Come on, maybe you can achieve it. Fan Busi was pleasantly surprised. Huh, you're different from others. You don't think I'm bragging? The young girl said, How do you know you can't achieve it if you don't work hard? Fan Busi immediately slapped his thigh and said, That's right. I knew there were smart people here. What about you? What's your goal? Why is it unrealistic? Are you and I kindred spirits? The young girl smiled and shook her head. I don't want to be a sword immortal. I'm myself. My goal, maybe it's a little more difficult than yours. Fan Busi exclaimed. More difficult than my goal? Tell me, I have wine. Let's have a drink. The young girl didn't stop him. She just felt that this young man really didn't look like a sword cultivator. Maybe that was why Han Fei treated him differently. The young girl said, My goal is to fall in love with someone I shouldn't fall in love with. I fell in love with someone I shouldn't love. I want to be able to stand by his side, openly one day, forever. Fan Busi thought to himself, What an infatuated girl. He comforted her. As you said, how do you know if you don't try? Who is that person? How strong is he? You don't seem to be from our bright moon town. I didn't see your strength at first glance. I'm afraid you are even stronger than me, right? Is that person a venerable or a hero? The young girl smiled. He's a human king. Pooh, Bright Moon Village. Early this morning, Han Fei was already standing in the place of spiritual awakening in the village. However, the statue erected in this place was Li Yingtian, and Han Fei had no feelings for him. It was much grander than the scene of the Heavenly Water Village's town awakening. Because the lawless sky didn't have a main city, it shared the main city with the Flying Feather Sky. So an explorer from the Flying Feather Sky came. Led by Han Fei and the explorer, when the time was up, Han Fei shouted, Enter the pool and awaken the spirit. Listen to me. Stay down there as long as you can. Besides, no matter how good your spiritual beasts are, they're your most loyal companions. People may lie, but your spiritual beasts won't. Therefore, every spiritual beast is a godsend companion. Open your mind and feel. The explorer couldn't help but glance at Han Fei, thinking that what he said was a bit interesting. Because there were many kings in the human settlement, spirit awakening fluid was not very valuable. But it was not an unlimited supply, but just enough to create a sense of rarity. While the spirit awakening was going on, suddenly, Han Fei's heart did a flip. He looked at a plainly dressed girl in the crowd, and then his heart sank. Why is she here? Have I been exposed? Is it possible? However, Han Fei found that Jiuyin Ling just watched this scene quietly and didn't pay much attention to him, so he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed to be a coincidence. He didn't expect this girl to experience the mortal world again. However, Han Fei agreed with her. As a half-king, with Jiuyin Ling's perception and his cultivation, she indeed needed to experience the mortal world more. If she had come to find him, she would have come a long time ago instead of waiting until now. Besides, everyone thought that he was lost in the endless abyss. Thinking of this, Han Fei was relieved. He hadn't finished his cultivation yet, so it was not appropriate for him to see anyone. Chapter 2087. To Han Fei's surprise, Jiuyin Ling actually stayed here. This surprised Han Fei. She didn't recognize him, so why did she stay here? Was it such a coincidence? Han Fei dealt with all the affairs in the village as usual, including sending some particularly outstanding children to the major schools in Moonlight Town and encouraging those with mediocre aptitudes. Spiritual heritage and talent didn't determine everything. Most of the time, The village leader was actually in charge of the village's market, population migration, newcomer assessment, and so on. However, he wouldn't be busy all day long. When he was free, Han Fei would hold a notebook. Because Jiuyin Ling was here, the contents of the notebook had been sealed by Han Fei in a mimicry layer. When he left the Beast King's place, the Beast King didn't give Han Fei nothing, as he said. He gave Han Fei this letter, an emperor's letter. This item was worth thousands of treasures. What Han Fei was studying now was recorded in the letter. The reason why everyone's Origin Sea could produce the aura of the Great Tao was because in the Origin Sea, their Great Tao hadn't manifested yet. One was to fuse the Great Tao and the Origin Sea, which was the most common method. If others destroyed the Origin Sea, they would destroy their Great Tao. In this case, the Great Tao and the Origin Sea would be fully fused, and it would be easier to produce power, and the power would be more smoothly channeled in battle. The other was to find a natal item in the Origin Sea that could carry their Great Tao after splitting open the sky and achieve a state of half-fusion between the Great Tao and the Origin Sea. This way, if others wanted to attack your Great Tao, it would not be enough to just attack your Origin Sea. They would also have to find your natal item. However, in the half-fusion state, the fusion of the Great Tao and the Origin Sea was not complete, and the aura of the Great Tao produced would be relatively slower and less than that of a complete fusion. Both had their advantages, and there were people who chose them. Han Fei asked the old turtle. It chose the half-fusion state, but the Great Tao was intercepted by the demon purification pot. The Great Tao was intercepted, which meant that this path was broken. If he wanted to continue on this path, he had to reopen it or change to a new path. In order to ensure the absolute safety of his Great Tao, one was to prove his Great Tao and let his Great Tao become one of the Heavenly Tao. By drawing the Heavenly Tao into one's Tao, not only could one ensure the strength of one's Tao, but one could also use the power of the Heavenly Tao to ensure one's strength. And this was a way to prove one's Tao in the Heaven Realm. Only by proving one's Tao, the Great Tao would return to the Heavenly Tao, and man would become one. Only then would one obtain longevity. After attaining immortality, it was not absolutely impossible for one to die. This was because at this time it was just that one's Great Tao was similar to the Heavenly Tao and was recognized by the Heavenly Tao. If one wanted to truly be immortal, they still had to merge with the Tao. This was the level of existences at the divine spirit level. However, the battle of deities had made all deities, including venerable sovereigns, realize that it was not impossible to die after merging with the Way. It was evident that life and death were inevitable in every cultivation level, even for deities. Therefore, the sovereign's note recorded the third possibility of the merging of the Great Path and the Origin Sea. This was known as returning to the origin. This venerable sovereign himself didn't know what Guiyuan was, but he had studied it for many years and found a few ways to do it. For example, he guessed that the first possibility was that a person walked on multiple great paths and merged them into one, or merged the great paths with each other, so that even if someone attacked you, they couldn't destroy all your great paths. Another guess was that a cultivator would start to walk on multiple great paths from the beginning of the sea expansion realm and merge these great paths into themselves. That was body refining and down merging. Han Fei thought he might be able to try this way. He was qualified to comprehend multiple great paths. As long as he was willing, he could have as many great paths as he wanted. However, how to merge body refining and down merging was the key. The guess given in the note was that he had to engrave the great path into his bloodline. This venerable sovereign had tried, but he was already a venerable sovereign, so he could only leave his bloodline inheritance. He guessed that maybe the way he refined body refining and down merging was wrong. Han Fei slowly closed the note. His eyes hurt from reading the venerable sovereign's note every day. This was not a joke. Even now, he felt that the words written by the venerable sovereign were profound. There seemed to be great power hidden between the lines. However, he had read so much today, and that was enough. Han Fei didn't have time to study bloodlines now. Anyway, he had the opportunity to open the sky. Besides, The venerable sovereign's note was just a guess and not necessarily accurate, so he didn't have to worry. Even after opening the sky, he could still try it. Leaving a clone of the village leader in the outside world, Han Fei entered the Sea of Origin. For so many years, he had been going back and forth in the Sea of Origin in the outside world. In fact, it had been more than 2,000 years. In the past 2,000 years, Han Fei did nothing else. After he came back, he went to the place where he had fought against the 100 demon clans and plundered the resources of the Sea of Origin there. Then he began to temper his golden jade bone with the help of the power of hope. Now, when Han Fei burst out his full power, his body could no longer bear all his strength. Han Fei believed that it was not a problem with his bloodline, but with his bones. The limit of the indestructible golden body could no longer bear the upper limit of his strength. However, his golden jade bone that was transforming could. Over the past countless years, the power of hope that Han Fei had accumulated could be described as massive. If it were an ordinary person, he would definitely be able to use this power to help him open the sky. There was probably no one like Han Fei who used his power to refine his bones. However, with the help of resources and the power of hope, now, Han Fei's golden jade bone had been completed by 95%. And now, with another wave of power of hope, with the help of resources, Han Fei continued to refine his bones. 1 month later, when Han Fei came out of the Sea of Origin, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. 96%. At this rate of progress, he would not be able to escape. In another 10 years, the bone refining should be almost completed. Jiuyin Ling lived on the edge of the cliff in the Bright Moon Village, planted a small garden, and lived a peaceful life. The only thing that made Han Fei unhappy was that he accepted the position of an auditor at the departure port. When he met Jiang Qin, she also had this identity. Han Fei was speechless. Why did all the strong like to be an auditor? Of course, Han Fei felt that he might know Jiuyin Ling's purpose. He guessed that Jiuyin Ling must have discovered his house in the Moonlight Town. So, he hid his identity and pretended to be an auditor so that he could meet a lot of people. However, although Han Fei often went to the departure port to patrol, the frequency was not very high, only once every 5 or 6 days. Besides, he would only go to the 4 departure ports in the Bright Moon Village. Therefore, he usually went to the departure port where Jiuyin Ling was only once every half a month to a month. He had been thinking about this for almost a month. It was time for him to patrol the departure port. Han Fei sighed slightly. What a headache. At the departure port in the south, the burly Han Fei wandered past the market with a stick in his hand. Leader, you haven't been here for a while. Go back and get a golden arowana. Han Fei scoffed. Are you bribing me? Just set up your stall. Leader, my son's strength has been growing very fast recently. I suspect that he has been enlightened recently. You must go to my house later. He definitely has the qualifications to go to the best academy in the Moonlight Town. Han Fei said, I'll go over and have a look in a couple of days. Don't tell me that you fed him with some spiritual fruit. Sometimes it's not good to spoil things with excessive enthusiasm. Oh, I dare not feed him blindly. My son has really broken out recently. Okay, then I'll go and have a look later. Before he took 2 steps, someone shouted again, Leader, you're not young anymore. Let me tell you an accurate one this time. My nephew's teacher is a teacher of the best academy in the Moonlight Town. She's strong and pretty. It's said that she's already a law enforcer. She's willing to live in the Bright Moon Village. Han Fei chased the man away. Go away. I don't need a woman. The man sneered. Leader, are you still a virgin? You're asking for a beating. After a while, Han Fei patrolled along the way, kicking here and looking over there. This was how he communicated with ordinary people. He didn't stop until he saw Jiuyin Ling. Girl, look at your temperament. You must be from a big clan, right? Why do you stay in this small Bright Moon Village? Jiuyin Ling didn't look like Jiuyin Ling at this moment, but it was hard to change one's temperament. Jiuyin Ling smiled. Leader, where my heart is at peace is my hometown. The order in the Bright Moon Village is excellent, which shows your good management. I'll wait for someone here. If they don't come, I'll leave. Han Fei shook his head slightly. Who in my Bright Moon Town is worthy of a handsome girl like you? Han Fei deliberately sighed, shook his head, put his hands behind his back, and continued to patrol. Zhuyin Ling casually looked at Han Fei's figure, smiled, and continued to examine those who went to see. Suddenly, a loud noise resounded from the distant sky. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the source of the power. However, 1,000,000 kilometers away, a huge void vortex suddenly burst out. Next to the shadowless sky, half of the main city of the white cloud sky was affected. Immediately afterward, the sound of a fierce battle broke out in the sky. This battle had to be very fast, and there were only 2 or 3 exchanges. Shi Huang shouted, "I'll avenge the destruction of the 100 demons with my own hands." Han Xian, you can guard against me for 100 years, but can you guard against me for 1,000 years? Han Fei is already dead. How can you find me? Humans, wait for your destruction. Arrogant. The sky rippled, and the white cloud sky suffered heavy losses. After a moment, Han Fei turned into a refugee of the white cloud sky and quietly stood in the ruined main city. Fortunately, thanks to the great array that Han Xian set up, the entire white cloud sky would have collapsed. As far as Han Fei could tell, countless people had died. Many of them had been destroyed along with the islands, turning into dust and ashes. Conservatively speaking, tens of millions of people had perished in the city that had been destroyed by this strike. Swish, 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 more and more figures appeared one after another. All the kings from the other domains had arrived. The master of the White Cloud Immortal Palace, Jiang Luoyun, was the first to appear. He vomited blood on the spot and shouted, "Shi Huang, I'm going to drink your flesh and eat your soul." Han Xian ordered, "Kings, return to the Immortal Palace quickly. Activate the city-protecting array. We can't be in a mess now." Then Han Xian shouted from a distance, "Senior Queen of Snails, how is it?" The Queen of Snails' voice echoed, "This guy was hit by me, but he ran too fast. I guess he wasn't hurt. Alas, I'm still too slow." Han Fei, on the other hand, stood here and walked in the ruined main city. Large tracts of buildings had collapsed. He could see the blood mist on the buildings, the mutilated bodies embedded in the ground, and the woman with only half of her body left screaming. He could see that a young man's body was twisted and irregular, and his bones protruded from his body. He had already died. As far as Han Fei's eyes could see, there were wreckages everywhere. At that moment, Han Fei was also confused. Even though he was used to life and death, and he didn't even blink in the past 100 years when so many people around him died, at this moment, he felt that his head was going to explode. Hell on earth. Han Fei's eyes were cold. "Shi Huang, you're courting death." Chapter 2088. No one expected the tragedy of the white cloud sky, including Han Fei. Even if Shi Huang wanted revenge, he shouldn't have attacked the main city of the Immortal Palace, just like Han Fei didn't attack ordinary sea demons after he won the battle. It was a big taboo for a heaven-opening state expert to attack ordinary people. If the strong could be so unscrupulous, how could the heavenly law allow it? Therefore, when Shi Huang attacked, everyone knew that Shi Huang was crazy. How terrible the consequences would be when a heaven-opening state expert went crazy. Neither Emperor Snail nor Han Xian dared to say that they could defeat Shi Huang. Emperor Snail was too slow, and Han Xian had just opened the sky and was not strong enough. It was almost impossible to stop Shi Huang. 9 Palace Heaven. Han Xian said directly, "Little Bai, have you really decided?" Luo Xiaobai said, "Shi Huang must be dealt with. We can't find him, so we can only lure him out. We can either find the Sword God Palace in the inner domain or the seabed humans. We need to arrange people for these 2 ways, but if there is no accident, Shi Huang will definitely attack the way to the inner domain. Although Kong Shun is not far away, Kong Shun may not dare to come. Otherwise, no one will protect the seabed humans." Shi Huang naturally thought of this as well. So, he will probably stop people from going to the inner domain. Han Xian said, "You don't have to take the risk." Luo Xiaobai said, "Demonic plants are the best at escaping. If Senior Emperor Snail gives me another protective barrier, I will be fine. Let's see if Shi Huang will be fooled." After this incident broke out, the humans in the nearby main cities Lion Heaven, Feather Heaven, Lawless Heaven, and Beast King were all in an uproar. It was said that tens of millions of humans were slaughtered in the white cloud sky. This number really frightened ordinary people. The power of the emperor was really too terrifying. Who would be able to stop it if it spread to where they were one day? Even in a small place like the Bright Moon Village, Han Fei's residence was almost trampled. Leader, won't the higher-ups send someone to deal with this matter? If we go to a small village, the emperor can just yawn and be gone. Leader, why don't you tell the higher-ups that we should go to the city to lie low? Someone scolded, are you stupid? If the emperor wanted revenge, the first target would definitely be the main city. Our small village will only be affected. Village chief, it doesn't matter if I die, but my son can't. You see, can't you send my son to the immortal palace near the 9-palace heaven? That's right, village chief. We know you're in a difficult position, but you're the only person in Bright Moon Village who can communicate with the higher-ups. You have some say in the town. It shouldn't be difficult to send some people to the immortal palace, right? The place where Han Fei was surrounded by 3 layers of people from the inside and 3 from the outside. It could be seen that Shi Pahuang's words of revenge had frightened everyone. In fact, Han Fei was in a worse mood than all of them. In order to wait for an opportunity, he did not appear for a long time. As a result, this tragedy happened. If he had appeared earlier and joined forces with Kong Shun and Empress would have killed Shi Pahuang. How could this tragedy have happened? Han Fei roared, everybody, go home and go to sea more often. In the eyes of the heaven-opening state, you are all like fish and shrimp in the sea, not worth mentioning. He may attack the main city, but he will never attack the village. Otherwise, he will be too ignorant. Someone shouted, what if it's the collateral damage? If the main city is destroyed, how can we live in peace? Someone said in horror, I heard that once the emperor takes action, all creatures within hundreds of thousands of kilometers will be annihilated. If something happens to the main city, we won't be able to escape. Shut up, all of you. Han Fei's voice rumbled, and he was furious. Look at yourselves. The human race has Emperor Xian, Empress Wu, and dozens of kings. Are they afraid? Are they terrified? If everyone is like you, panicking and trying to survive, how can a human race rise? Wait for me, I'll go to the town and ask. Han Fei almost blurted out that he had gone to kill Shi Pahuang, but fortunately, he restrained himself. From afar, Zhu Ling watched this scene and said lightly, projection? Even if Shi Pahuang comes to your door, you're not willing to join forces with others to kill him? Why are you also experiencing the mortal world? What happened to you? 6 hours later, it was at least 60 million kilometers away from the human race's settlement. Shi Pahuang sat on a mountain at the bottom of the sea. Today, he only made a tentative attack to see how many experts the human race had. He deliberately attacked Fei Yutian on the periphery to test Han Xian's current strength and to see the current experts of the human race. Humph! A snail is too slow. As long as I'm not distracted by it, Han Xian can't stop me. At this time, if they want to catch me, they can either go to Kong Shun or the Sword God or Wang Yijian in the inner area. Shi Pahuang's eyes were cold, but he hesitated. He was thinking about where to attack. The best place to attack was the misty. In this way, if he really went that far, one of the Empress Wu or Han Xian would have to stay. If it was Han Xian, he might be able to take him down. If it was the Empress Wu, he could rush back as fast as he could and at least heavily injure Han Xian, kill a dozen kings, and destroy the major palaces. Shi Pahuang's plan was perfect, but suddenly he looked behind him and saw a golden light flashing. It flashed 3 times in a row and landed 10,000 miles away from him. When Shi Pahuang took a closer look, his face changed drastically. He said in disbelief, Han Fei? How could you come out of the endless void? Han Fei said indifferently, everything is possible. I thought you would retaliate, but I didn't expect you to attack ordinary people. As a mighty heaven-opening expert, I broke through the Emperor realm. Millions of vengeful spirits have come to claim your life. Shi Pahuang sneered and suddenly narrowed his eyes. Han Fei, you came alone? Han Fei said indifferently, I alone am enough to kill you. Shi Pahuang snorted. Logically speaking, if you come out of the endless void, you should find a way to kill me immediately. But you didn't. And in the human world, the news that you fell into the endless void has been spreading. Don't tell me you never returned to the human race. I see. You are waiting for the heaven-opening realm. You want to understand the last hurdle? But today, I am slaughtering the human world, and you can't sit still? Sherpa Huang saw through Han Fei's current state at a glance. It was very difficult to become a heaven-opening realm expert. Otherwise, how could there be so few heaven-opening realm experts in the chaotic vast sea? Han Fei grew too fast. From the venerable realm to the peak of the sea-opening realm, it only took him 100 years. How could it be so easy to understand the Tao and find the last opportunity to open the sky? Therefore, Sherpa Huang was not nervous at all. He said, "You didn't attack when I was weak but appeared at this time. Do you really think you can kill an emperor alone?" Han Fei couldn't help but think of what Fan Busi said to him back then. No matter what, no matter who the enemy is, you should face your opponent squarely. Swish, Han Fei's power instantly erupted to the extreme. The void in front of Sherpa Huang and below him was torn open. Han Fei stretched out his hand and a blue halo appeared. The great Tao of time could distort time and directly obliterate Sherpa Huang's Tao of space. In an instant, Han Fei held the blade of time and slashed out. Sherpa Huang didn't dare to be careless. Although he said Han Fei was in the sea-opening realm, this guy called himself the Human King, so his strength must not be underestimated. "Humph, since the void can't do anything to you, then I'll banish you again." The black hole appeared, and the tide of the raging sea floated up. Han Fei flipped his hand, and the great Tao convergence sword slashed to the edge of the endless void. With a bang, it exploded into countless sword lights and instantly created a void storm. But the void storm was quickly swallowed. Han Fei frowned slightly and twisted time again, but the black hole was still expanding and was actually swallowing time. Han Fei hurriedly retreated. In the endless void, the meaning of time and space was not clear. They seemed to exist and yet not exist. Therefore, he could swallow the power of time. At that moment, Han Fei's speed broke out to the extreme, and fist marks suddenly burst out. Each punch exceeded at least 2 million waves. "Han Fei, you can't kill me. How can a sea-opening realm expert understand the power of opening the sky?" Sherpa Huang knew that even if he swam crazily at the edge of the endless void, it would not be a problem. But Han Fei was different. Therefore, countless void spirals condensed around Sherpa Huang's body, blocking Han Fei's fist marks all over the sky. Han Fei didn't take it seriously. On his arms, 2 scimitars burst out, and a huge yin-yang wheel appeared. The Blade of Hope could ignore the void restriction. The great Tao of Yin and Yang was the law of nature. In the blink of an eye, it deprived the endless void of the power to expand. Han Fei sneered. "It's just opening the sky. Do you really think you can open the endless void for a long time?" The two of them fought again, fighting for millions of miles, until the space collapsed and the sea collapsed. Sherpa Huang shouted, "Han Fei, how many creatures have died in the sea in the battle between you and me? Is it more or less than the human race?" "Humph, everyone is just an ant. Now I have a clear mind. Do you think I will be haunted by bad karma for those people? When I go there next time, I will definitely slaughter a few major cities of the human race." Fuse. Han Fei activated the Gemini divine technique and took out the historical phantom of the ultimate blade from time and instantly drilled into Sherpa Huang's head. Explode. Chapter 2089. Han Fei's explosion was the self-detonation of a divine weapon. For so many years, Han Fei had been doing nothing. In addition to forging the golden jade body, reading the Supreme Emperor's letter, waiting for the opportunity to open the sky, he had been studying how to kill enemies. Of course, he had also studied Sherpa Huang's Tao of Space a lot, because Han Fei knew it too. It wasn't easy for heaven-splitting experts to die. That was because heaven-splitting experts had far too many resources in their source seas. They could instantly use all their energy to easily crush intruders. If he didn't have the demon refining gourd, he wouldn't have been able to brazenly enter the origin sea of the heaven-opening realm to fight. However, in the opponent's origin sea, because of the suppression of infinite power, it was difficult for Han Fei to defeat the opponent quickly. Even the demon purification pot needed half a day to absorb it. If he fought against a heaven-opening expert like before, there would be too many limitations, and it would be difficult for him to obtain victory quickly. Therefore, the fastest way to destroy the opponent was to attack with absolute power, and he just happened to have this condition. It didn't matter how long the item he had fished out of time could last. Even if it could only last for an instant, it was more than enough. Han Fei even tried fishing for Beast Kings. In the end, the Beast King, who had managed to fish him out with great difficulty, slapped him to the ground with a backhand and cursed, "Don't use this kind of trick on venerable sovereigns. Even if they are in the heaven-opening state, they can still connect to the past, even though they can't see the future, unless you are strong enough to use time to stop their will from descending." Because of the Beast King's reminder, Han Fei didn't try to catch any more dangling masters. However, a historical phantom like the ultimate blade belonged to him in the first place, so it was very easy for him to fish for it. How could a heaven-opening stage cultivator who was not a body refiner be able to stop the self-destruction of a dignified god tool? Even though Shi Pahuang's body was that of an octopus, the toughness of his flesh was still relative. It was not strong enough to withstand the self-destruction of a god artifact. Shi Pahuang's body was instantly blown to smithereens. But this was far from enough to kill him. Han Fei could only create trouble for him the moment he regained his physical body. After all, he had yet to split open the sky. In terms of his understanding of the great Tao and the depth of his origin sea, he could not compare to a true heaven-opening expert. He could defeat Shi Pahuang, but he couldn't completely kill him. As long as the great Tao was not extinguished, the heavens would not die. However, this time, Han Fei did not immediately enter Shi Pahuang's origin sea. Instead, it was the place where Shi Pahuang's main body had been revived that had been layered with several hundred time barriers. Time loop. This was a time barrier set up by Han Fei, which would repeat something for a certain period of time. It was the same as the War Soul realm in the Ideal Palace. Han Fei didn't allow Shi Pahuang's body to be reconstructed, so that his soul would be in a state of chaos for a short time. In the end, Han Fei broke into someone else's source sea again. However, this time, he no longer tried to compete with the heaven-opening state for resources. The moment Han Fei entered Shi Pahuang's origin sea, the multisensory navigator turned. Shi Pahuang growled, "Han Fei, do you think the Tao of Time can trap me?" Han Fei sneered. "If you couldn't trap him, you would have already taken action. Why are you wasting time here?" Han Fei didn't know how long the time loop could last. However, the navigator had a clear direction, which meant that Han Fei didn't need to destroy Shi Pahuang's entire origin sea, because he had his own natal item. Shi Pahuang's origin sea was mainly composed of kelp forests and coral reefs, supplemented by various other landforms. Because octopuses might like to drill holes, there were a lot of holes here. Han Fei took a step forward, and a large number of void vortexes intertwined. The void of the entire origin sea formed an endless void channel, trying to stop Han Fei. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. This time, he used Golden Light Leap in this endless void channel. "You're courting death." However, to Shi Pahuang's surprise, Han Fei ignored the existence of the void channel and stepped on the void, folding the void. Shi Pahuang exclaimed, "How come you know the Tao of space?" At this moment, Han Fei condensed a large amount of immortal spiritual energy and fierce energy in his hand and slashed at a shell hidden among billions of shells. While attacking, Han Fei responded, "The Tao of space, I learned it when I was in the venerable state." BM rumble, rumble. In an instant, under the superposition of the crafty time technique, Han Fei's attack exploded twice. The shell was directly cut by Han Fei, and its surface was full of cracks. But even so, the shell was not broken, which showed that it was not easy to cut the Tao. Puff in Shi Pahuang's origin sea, a mist of blood splashed. At the risk of being seriously injured, This guy forcibly broke Han Fei's time cycle barrier. In an instant, the power of Shi Huang's entire origin sea was mobilized, and the bottom of Han Fei's body split open, forming an endless abyss at the bottom of the sea. But when Han Fei sensed the rich, chaotic energy, he knew that Shi Huang was going to exile him, just like Bei Luochen. Han Fei grabbed the immortal spiritual energy in one hand and the fierce energy in the other. He breathed out the chaotic energy, and the third eye between his eyebrows opened. Do you think I'll be fooled by the same trick twice? Yin-Yang Reincarnation Blade, explode. At this moment, a shocking beam of light burst out of Shi Huang's origin sea, where the Tao was. Han Fei chose to turn himself into a blade, and after the Yin-Yang Reincarnation Blade, he blew himself up. Puff, puff, outside, in the void, cracks appeared one after another. Above the sky, blood-colored cracks covered the sky, as if the sky had opened and tears of blood flowed. At this moment, in the chaotic ocean, all the kings and heaven-opening state powerhouses looked at the sky in shock. Who died? Han Xian and Luo Xiaobai's plan hadn't been implemented yet. It had only been 6 hours since Shi Huang's sneak attack, and a heaven-opening state powerhouse had already died. Who wouldn't be shocked? In the Sword God Palace of the Inner Sea, the Sword God said to Wang Yijian, "I'm going to the outer domain." The kings of the 9 Palace Heaven gathered, and Han Xian and the others looked strange. Han Xian asked, "Which heaven-opening state powerhouse can die in the outer sea? Is it Kong Shun?" Luo Xiaobai suddenly thought of something. Shi Huang had been seriously injured. Even if his strength had recovered to the peak, it was impossible for him to kill Kong Shun in such a short time. The Snail King said, "It's very close to us." Han Xian said, "I'll go and have a look. Please take care of the human race." Shi Huang's Tao collapsed, and in reality, Han Fei merged into one. Shi Huang roared, "You're just a clone?" Han Fei was expressionless, and his voice was indifferent. The so-called sky opening is just a deeper understanding of the Tao and a closer integration with the origin sea. How dare you slaughter the human race? At this moment, Han Fei activated the law of heaven and earth, holding the phoenix feather knife in his hand. Like a blazing sun in full bloom, he slashed at Shi Huang, who had just recovered his original body, but had lost his Tao. Just now, even Shi Huang couldn't resist Han Fei's white mist body, not to mention Han Fei's full strength. Shi Huang's flesh, blood, and soul were completely destroyed. This time, the nautical panorama rotated again, and Han Fei tore the sky with his hands, forcibly opening Shi Huang's origin sea again. A small vine stretched out of his hand, and a large amount of immortal spiritual energy and chaotic energy were sucked over. Void descent. Hundreds of thousands of Han Fei's identities descended here and took away a massive amount of resources in just a dozen seconds. In just a moment, Shi Huang's origin sea was torn to pieces. Anticipating Han Xian's arrival, Han Fei didn't loot Shi Huang's origin sea, but left in the blink of an eye. After a moment, less than 100 seconds after Han Fei left, Han Xian arrived. When he saw the void storm and the void chasm that couldn't be healed for a long time, he was shocked. The reason for that was because that spatial crack led to the fallen martial emperor's origin sea. With just a glance, Han Xian knew that Shi Huang was dead. Yes, a sky-opening overlord was killed more than 60 million kilometers away from the human race after attacking the human race for only 6 hours, his blood splashing on the ground. "Brat, you're back." Han Xian wasn't stupid. He couldn't kill Shi Huang in such a short time, and neither could Kong Shun. In the inner area, only Wang Yijian had the title of killing an emperor with one sword. However, if it were Wang Yijian, he wouldn't have left after killing Shi Huang. Most importantly, Han Xian sensed the Tao of time here. In the entire chaotic ocean, Han Fei was the only one who walked the Tao of time. Therefore, there was no one else except Han Fei. Phew, Han Xian couldn't help but smile. It turned out that Han Fei had been here the whole time. Half a day later, shocked, the lords of the human race all reported to the human world. The despicable emperor, Shi Huang, who caused chaos in the human race, has been killed by an unknown overlord. The enemies of the human race in the outer area have all been wiped out. Hiss. An unknown overlord? Wasn't it Emperor Xian? Was it the Snail Emperor? It said that the Snail Emperor is also extremely powerful. The Snail Emperor didn't even leave the human race. How could it be the Snail Emperor? It must be Wang Yijian. No one can kill an emperor so quickly except for the emperor with one sword. No, don't forget that we're talking about an unknown overlord. If it's an unknown overlord, why can't it be the human king? Whatever, as long as he's dead, it means that there's still an overlord protecting the human race. Hundreds of millions of people celebrated together. In the Bright Moon Village, Han Fei pretended to return in a hurry. He didn't need to explain anything to the people who were already ecstatic after hearing the king's voice. Han Fei grinned slightly. What do ordinary people want? Just to live? Suddenly, Han Fei looked at the corner far away, where Jiuyin Ling was looking at him quietly. She didn't speak, nor did she need to. It seemed that she knew who he was from the beginning. Chapter 2090. I'm leaving. Han Fei and Jiuyin Ling were separated by the noisy and cheering crowd, and Jiuyin Ling suddenly spoke to Han Fei via voice transmission. When Jiuyin Ling looked at him, Han Fei knew that she had recognized him, although he didn't know how she recognized him. He believed that even if Jiuyin Ling was in the same realm as him, there was no reason for her to see through him. Han Fei couldn't help but smile bitterly. How did you know it was me? Jiuyin Ling smiled at Han Fei. I recognized you at a glance in the crowd, because while others were stepping on the ground, you were stepping on my heart. For a moment, Han Fei didn't know what to say. However, since Jiuyin Ling said that she was leaving, Han Fei couldn't help but ask, then why are you leaving? Jiuyin Ling, everyone has their own voice. You're mine. The moment I saw you, I knew that it was time to transcend the tribulation. You, on the other hand, are not suitable for training in the mortal world, but you chose to do this. It seems that you have found your true path. Han Fei sighed. I haven't figured it out yet. I just want to let go and empty myself. Jiuyin Ling shook her head slightly. All choices are reasonable. Behind every choice, there is a true meaning. From the moment you walked out of the cage, you had already found it. When you saved the Yin-Yang Waterwood, you had already embarked on this path. When you rebuilt the human world, you had actually walked on this path for a long time. The Tao of humans, the Tao of human kings, the Tao of human emperors. You have always felt that you are not a good person, but you have never done anything harmful to the human race. You just don't dare to admit it. Jiuyin Ling explained slowly in an unhurried voice, as if she was comforting, encouraging, and happy for Han Fei. Hearing what Jiuyin Ling said, Han Fei was shocked and couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. Jiuyin Ling, on the other hand, said to herself, before I found you, I didn't know my own path, and I couldn't be firm. The moment I found you after traveling thousands of mountains and rivers, all the things I heard along the way turned into a great Tao, the voice of humanity. From now on, the path ahead is unobstructed. The sea expansion realm can't stop me, nor can the sky splitting realm. Han Fei pondered for a long time. Congratulations. Jiuyin Ling shook her head slightly. Because of you, I heard the voice of humanity. This Tao arose because of you. I've come and I've left, but I'll come again in the future. I look forward to that moment. After that, Jiuyin Ling disappeared from the Bright Moon Village. 100 breaths of time later, in the outer realms, somewhere in the skies above the various immortal palaces, an ethereal voice suddenly sounded out. Wait for the light to turn off. In the beginning, there were only a few soft sounds, but it turned into a beautiful and ethereal melody. The billions of human beings who were celebrating were suddenly attracted by this ethereal voice. They even forgot to talk, fearing that their slightest sound would ruin this moving melody. Some people burst into tears as they listened to the music that was filled with Taoist rhymes. Some of them grinned, revealing a silent smile. Some people's faces were full of worry, but their brows slowly relaxed. For a moment, the joys and sorrows of the world, the hardships and tribulations, seemed to be washed away by this melody. The master of the Brahma heaven, Liang Yin, was shocked when she first heard this voice. She was the first to fly towards the source of the voice. Most of the other kings did the same. The masters of the immortal palaces, Han Xian, the empress of snails, Luo Xiaobai, Zhang Xuanyu, Lu Renquang, and the others all came. Gulp, Liang Yin couldn't help but swallow and said in shock, "What a powerful Tao. It's so magnificent. The Sanskrit has been chanting for 100,000 years, but this Tao has never been opened. Jiuyin Ling has created a brand new sound?" Watching the heavenly tribulation gather crazily, and after a long time, when the first heavenly tribulation had purple lightning, even Han Xian gasped. The Empress of Snails asked, "Who is this little girl? Isn't this grand Tao a little too powerful?" Han Xian nodded. "I don't know her very well. She seems to be from a yin-yang heaven." Next to Luo Xiaobai, Zhang Xuanyu mumbled, "The first heavenly tribulation is purple. How did Jiuyin Ling comprehend such a terrifying Tao?" Lu Renquang asked, "Isn't Jiuyin Ling growing too fast? Not only did she break through 3 levels in one day, but this one seems to be even stronger than our Daos." Luo Xiaobai narrowed her eyes and said after a long time, "Sure, Pa Huang died. Jiuyin Ling passed the heavenly tribulation. Han Fei is back." What? Even Han Xian and the Empress of Snails couldn't help but look at Luo Xiaobai. Why did Han Fei come back when this little girl passed the heavenly tribulation? Han Xian asked, "Xiaobai, what do you mean?" Zhang Xuanyu suddenly slapped his forehead. "Why didn't I think of it? Who else could make Jiuyin Ling suddenly comprehend Tao other than Han Fei?" Lu Renquang said with mixed feelings, "We have to find Xia Xiaochan as soon as possible." Luo Xiaobai said, "Although Jiuyin Ling is unknown, she has gone through many ups and downs in the past 100 years. Look, her Tao seems to be different from before." The purple lightning was blocked by the melody and could only slowly seep into the melody and be absorbed by Jiuyin Ling. However, the kings immediately discovered that the billions of voices of the entire human race were gathering towards Jiuyin Ling, and from the beginning to the end, Jiuyin Ling just looked up at the heavenly tribulation in silence. Han Xian was shocked. The voices of the human world? This girl established the sea with the voices of the human world? The Empress of Snails asked, "Is the human race going to rise? If this girl's enlightenment is related to Han Fei, where is he?" Everyone was stumped by this question. Nobody except Jiuyin Ling knew where Han Fei was, right? Boom, boom, heavenly tribulations came one after another. Even though the last heavenly tribulation turned purple-red, it still couldn't crush Jiuyin Ling's voice. Han Fei looked at it from afar and was also shocked. Was Jiuyin Ling very talented? No. Only Han Fei knew that Jiuyin Ling might be very talented, but she was definitely not that talented in the entire human race. Whether it was in terms of spiritual heritage, bloodline, talent, or luck, Jiuyin Ling was not the strongest. However, the power of the heavenly tribulation alone was almost certain that Jiuyin Ling would be one of the future powerhouses of the human race. Han Fei took a slight breath and said slowly, "So, this is the power of the Taoist heart." After a moment, Kong Shun came. He was surprised by Shi Pa Huang's death, but the moment he saw Jiuyin Ling's tribulation, he couldn't help but be shocked. What a terrifying heavenly tribulation. What a terrifying Tao. When the 9th heavenly tribulation came, the heavenly demons appeared and covered Jiuyin Ling for about 10 seconds. But when the heavenly tribulation dispersed, Jiuyin Ling was still standing quietly in the void. She glanced in the direction of the Bright Moon Village and put on a faint smile. "Congratulations, fellow Taoist." Amid the congratulations, only Luo Xiaobai and the other 2 looked in the direction where Jiuyin Ling's eyes were. Zhang Xuanyu cursed. "This be asterisk starred. He's clearly still alive, but he refuses to show up. Did he hit his head with an ironhead fish?" Lu Renquang asked, "Is there anything that he can't tell us?" Zhang Xuanyu said angrily, "If he doesn't tell us, Xia Xiaochan can't tell us either. That idiot is still studying how to enter the infinite void in the mermaid royal family. Is that a place she can enter?" Luo Xiaobai said, "Don't tell Xiaochan." Huh? Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Renquang were both stunned and asked why. Luo Xiaobai said. He has his reasons for not showing up. Since he didn't tell us, it's impossible for him to tell Jiuyin Ling. It's just that Jiuyin Ling is stubborn. It's said that she's been traveling in the world in recent decades. It's probably just her luck that she found Han Fei. Now, Jiuyin Ling is undergoing her tribulation, and Han Fei still doesn't show up. At least he's not dead yet. Han Xian and the Snail Emperor listened and found it strange. The Snail Emperor immediately said, I see. It seems that he's stuck on the way of opening the sky. Han Xian nodded slightly. I'm afraid that's the only reason why that brat hasn't shown up for so long. Bright Moon Village. Lying on his rocking chair, Han Fei murmured, The path of Human Emperor? Me? Human Emperor? Han Fei lay down for a day and a night. He randomly sent a projection to manage the village affairs, his head full of the word Human Emperor. Who am I? I'm Han Fei. Am I really a good person? At this moment, Han Fei's glabella flashed, and the Emperor Sparrow ran out on its own. At this moment, the Emperor Sparrow stood on a branch and looked at Han Fei. Do people have to be divided into good and bad? Han Fei was silent for a long time. Can we say hello next time we come out? Do you think I'm qualified to be the Human Emperor? The Emperor Sparrow glanced at Han Fei contemptuously. I don't think you deserve to be the Human Emperor. Han Fei asked back, Why am I not qualified? I just don't really want to take on this burden. Yes, I don't really want to. I clearly wanted to wander around the world and experience the vast oceans and realms. The Emperor Sparrow asked, Is there any conflict between being the Human Emperor and doing these things? Han Fei thought for a moment. I don't think so. The Emperor Sparrow asked, You're enlightened. Before I'm enlightened, I still want to slack off. Chapter 2091. Not far away from the dense fog sea, the Emperor Sparrow suddenly said, Little Fatty is about to undergo a tribulation. Han Fei had to stop. The tribulation couldn't have happened earlier or later, but now. What good time. Han Fei had expected Little Fatty to undergo a tribulation, but he didn't expect it to be so soon. Because Sherpa Huang was also an octopus, and Little Fatty was devouring his power and comprehending his great path. It seemed reasonable that Little Fatty, who had been on the verge of undergoing a tribulation, was going to undergo a tribulation. Yes, after sleeping in the Bright Moon Village for a day and night, Han Fei left a clone to manage the Bright Moon Village, and he came to the Mermaid Royal Family. Jiuyin Ling was right. In fact, he had always known where he was going, but he didn't want to admit it. He had always been the one educating others. At the beginning, he guided Jiuyin Ling to experience the world of mortals. Unexpectedly, in the blink of an eye, he became the one being educated. Han Fei knew that his relationship with Jiuyin Ling was very subtle and complicated. He appreciated Jiuyin Ling very much, but he couldn't accept her love. This kind of love was so high that they didn't need to be together at all. It was completely spiritual. Oh no, it had become a love on the level of great path. Han Fei couldn't accept it now. In fact, what Han Fei liked most was the playful relationship with Xia Xiaochan, which was very close to life and very practical. In other words, Han Fei could still accept the feeling of sharing life and death with Shimin Linglan. But now, the only one Han Fei could really catch was Xia Xiaochan. 2 days passed. In the Mermaid Royal City. Xia Xiaochan cultivated in the Mermaid Royal City for 100 years. Xia Hongzhu was more than happy to do so, as it was the best opportunity to repair their relationship. Mom, the Tao heart is too mysterious. The length of time in the endless void is mainly related to the Tao heart. There must be a measurement of the Tao heart, but in fact, the Tao heart can't be quantified at all. So, I've recently studied a way to get out of the endless void. Xia Hongzhu, who was sitting cross-legged to recover, stopped cultivating and slightly opened her eyes. Oh, how do you get out of the endless void? Xia Xiaochan said solemnly, The endless void is the reality. When we arrive at the void, we arrive at a chaotic space after the collapse of the void. Since it could be opened from the outside, there should be a way to cause the endless void to collapse from the inside. The Tao heart can decide how long one can stay in the endless void but can't decide whether one can come out or not. That's why I don't think we can talk about the Tao heart now. The endless void is the source of primal chaos aura, and there is primal chaos aura in reality as well, even though it's very thin. But this means that the endless void is leaking chaotic chi to the outside world. Can we use the chaotic chi to find a weapon that can open a void passage by injecting chaotic chi into it? While explaining her research, Xia Xiaochan drew a weird syringe-shaped device on the fish skin. Right when Xia Xiaochan was about to explain the principle behind this weapon, Xia Hongzhu's heart suddenly stirred. "Your sweetheart is here." Xia Xiaochan raised her eyelids. "Mom, don't interrupt. Are you listening to me?" Xia Hongzhu said, "Your sweetheart really came." Xia Xiaochan immediately put her hands on her hips and said angrily, "You're not listening to me at all. It took me a long time to figure this out. Also, I don't have a sweetheart. I don't like mermaids at all. Humph." As she spoke, Xia Xiaochan held her drawings. "If you don't want to listen to me, I'll figure it out myself. I'm a king anyway." Xia Xiaochan ran to her palace angrily. He had only run a few steps when he saw a figure walk in with a swoosh. Han Fei shouted, "Xiao Xiu, it's my honor to meet you, mother-in-law." After that, Han Fei looked at Xia Xiaochan, who was dumbfounded and shocked. Clatter, the pile of fish skin drawings in Xia Xiaochan's hands fell to the ground. When she saw that Han Fei wasn't as strong as a half-king, she knew that Han Fei was real. After a moment of shock, Xia Xiaochan suddenly screamed, and then the girl lunged at her. "Where the hell have you been? How did you get out? I was so worried about you, did you know that? If the infinity water wasn't still intact, I would have thought you were dead." "Woo-woo, Baji." Xia Xiaochan jumped on Han Fei and opened her mouth to bite Han Fei's shoulder. The bite force of the Pioneer Sea realm couldn't be described as ordinary. Even though Han Fei's physique was strong, it still hurt. However, Han Fei liked this feeling. When he was with Shimin Linglan, they depended on each other. It was a very complicated feeling. Compared with Jiuyin Ling, he was too weak in terms of mental strength. He and Xia Xiaochan were the best. They were childhood sweethearts and had nothing to do with each other. For example, Shimin Linglan and Jiuyin Ling wouldn't be as casual and crazy as Xia Xiaochan. Han Fei patted Xia Xiaochan's back and said gently, "I'm back. Sorry to keep you waiting. I promise I won't be away for so long next time." "What? There's a next time?" "Baji, I won't leave. I won't leave. Yes. I won't leave. I won't leave you behind." Xia Hongzhu looked at the two who were making a scene in front of her. They were kings in the Pioneer Sea realm. How could they behave like this? However, judging from the way they got along with each other and how intimate they were, Xia Hongzhu really didn't find that Han Fei had any ulterior motives. The interaction between the two of them was too natural. It was so natural that there was almost no distinction between them. As a mother, she had been with her daughter for 100 years, but she had never felt so casual with her daughter, but she did with Han Fei. Xia Hongzhu could see that Han Fei and Balan were two completely different people. However, as she said before, no matter how good Han Fei was, he was too radical. The closer they were to each other now, the deeper their love for each other. If something happened to Han Fei in the future, the consequences could be imagined. Therefore, even now, Xia Hongzhu actually didn't approve of Xia Xiaochan and Han Fei being together at her heart. However, she wasn't persuasive now. Since Han Fei was drawn into the endless void, Xia Xiaochan had been studying how to break through the endless void to find him for 100 years. However, Xia Hongzhu thought that Han Fei was already dead because no one could float in the endless void for so long, not even herself. Therefore, she was very surprised that Han Fei could come out today. Almost immediately, she realized that Han Fei didn't stay in the endless void for so long at all and should have come out a long time ago. Since he had come out a long time ago, why hadn't he come to pick up Xia Xiaochan but made her wait for 100 years? However, thinking of the death of a heaven-opening state powerhouse a few days ago, this should have something to do with Han Fei's reappearance. Besides, judging from Han Fei's current momentum, even though he had restrained it, she could still feel that he was stronger than before. Therefore, Xia Hongzhu had roughly guessed the reason. In the past 100 years, Han Fei was probably looking for the real opportunity to open the sky. Xiao Hongzhu snorted softly. Han Fei knew what Xiao Hongzhu was thinking. This was the son of God, who could be said to be at the peak of the chaotic ocean sea. How could he not understand the meaning of his appearance? So, Han Fei said solemnly, "Mother-in-law, I'm now at the peak of my strength. Please allow me to go back with me." Xiao Shaochan turned around and said in a spoiled manner, "Mom, I've been in the mermaid royal family for a long time, and my strength has grown rapidly. It's time for me to go back." Xiao Hongzhu clenched her fists and snorted. "You don't want to study the endless void anymore?" Xiao Shaochan shook her head like a rattle. "No, it's too exhausting. I've failed so many times. I'm tired." Han Fei said, "You still have to study it. Come on, leave your research materials with me. I'll study them later. One day, you and I will be able to travel in the endless void at will." Xiao Shaochan immediately stuffed a pair of fish skin drawings into Han Fei's arms. Han Fei was about to put them away when he suddenly thought of something. A syringe? Xiao Shaochan was not a refiner, so she couldn't grasp and construct a complete set of tools as accurately as a refiner could. Because of this, the drawings he drew were simple and easy to understand. This weapon was not so much a syringe as a container for squeezing chaotic energy. Through the massive eruption of chaotic energy, he could find the connection point of the chaotic energy in the endless void to infiltrate into reality. Although this idea was not complete, it was clear, simple, and violent. Han Fei felt that this method might really work. Of course, it was definitely not enough to realize it. Han Fei was here to pick up Xiao Shaochan, so he didn't think too much about it. So he put it into his origin sea. Perhaps because the chaotic ocean was still within her control, Xiao Hongzhu didn't stop Han Fei from picking up Xiao Shaochan, but her voice rang out in Han Fei's head. She said, "Shaochan is my daughter. If you put yourself in danger again and again, I can tolerate it once or twice, but I won't tolerate it again and again. You're on your own." Han Fei nodded imperceptibly and was about to rush out of the door with Xiao Shaochan in a hurry. The two of them whispered to each other. Xiao Shaochan asked, "You didn't run into Chun Huangdian, did you?" Han Fei replied, "Fortunately, I didn't. Otherwise, I might have beaten him to death with my temper." Xiao Shaochan said, "He's much stronger now. You have to open the path of geniuses first, or it won't be easy for you to defeat him." Han Fei asked, "What's wrong with opening the sky? I just killed one." It was not until the two of them left the royal family of mermaids that Chun Huangdian finally showed up coldly. "Are you going to marry a human being?" Xiao Hongzhu slightly shook her head. "This is not a marriage. Women are always naive. She thinks this is love." Chapter 2092. The Bright Moon Village. It was still in this village, because Han Fei had met a lot of people in this village and they were familiar with each other. However, when he returned this time, Han Fei resigned and entrusted the position of the village leader to a reliable peak-level law enforcer. This old man had been stuck at the peak-level law enforcer level for too long. He had probably given up, so he returned to the Bright Moon Village to teach and educate people. Han Fei knew that he was reliable, so he trusted him. Of course, the main reason was that Han Fei didn't intend to leave the Bright Moon Village. In the Bright Moon Village, Han Fei used his power to buy a yard for himself. 3 rooms and 10 kilometers of vegetable fields. This vegetable field was naturally the spiritual orchard that he saw at the beginning, where he planted fruits and so on. At this moment, Xiao Shaochan was sulking because she knew that Han Fei had lived here for decades and didn't go to find her. She was so angry that she burst into tears. Han Fei said, "Girl, it's time to eat." Han Fei came in with a plate of golden silk shrimp balls. Xiao Shaochan lay directly on the bed, turned her back, and didn't say a word. Han Fei shrugged helplessly. She was really angry this time. Han Fei sat down on the bed. "I made you wait for 100 years. Now I'll accompany you for 100 years. Let's work at sunrise and rest at sunset in this Bright Moon Village and enjoy 100 years of peace. How about that?" "Humph. How busy are you?" "You are a human king who has opened the sea and opened the sky. There's still a lot of things waiting for you to do. You still have to understand the Tao and open the sky. How dare we covet 100 years of your time?" Han Fei picked up a golden silk shrimp ball with both hands, stuffed it into his mouth, and took a bite. He said, "In the next 100 years, we have to live like ordinary people. We have to fish in the fishery, pay the fish tax, buy furniture, and make a few friends. So what? I'm going to rebuild the human race. What's wrong with giving myself 100 years of vacation?" Xia Xiaochan asked. "You've already understood the Tao. Why don't you open the sky?" Han Fei shrugged. "I didn't understand it." Thud. Xia Xiaochan sat up with a grunt. "Why did you come to me when you didn't have an epiphany?" "Oh, I've only been here for a few days, and I've already heard countless people praise Juyin Ling for establishing the sea and creating the sound of humanity. Someone must have gone to see Juyin Ling first. Come and coax me now. I'm telling you, you can't coax me anymore." Han Fei was lost for words. "I can't. I swear I've never been to Juyin Ling. I didn't even look for you. So why would I look for her?" "I don't want to listen. I don't want to listen. You can sleep on the floor tonight, Sai." "Fight, fight, fight." "No, you're sleeping on the floor this year." "No, isn't that a little too much? I am a bona fide sovereign personage. Do I have to sleep on the floor for a year?" Xia Xiaochan pouted and glared. "You don't like it?" "I'd love to, but I really didn't. I only see a path now. I only think about where the limit of this path lies." "The great Tao?" "No, it's the limit of the Taoist heart that this path can bear." "Humph! How can ordinary girls like me understand the Taoist heart of experts like you?" "I'm going to bed." Han Fei took a look. The situation had just changed a little. Why did they turn hostile again? Immediately, Han Fei put the golden silk shrimp balls on the table and said fiercely, "If I don't beat you for 3 days, you'll tear the tiles off the roof. As a sovereign personage, I can't deal with a little girl like you." Then, Han Fei stopped sleeping on the floor and lunged at her like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey. "Bah! Pervert! Take your hands away. Woo! Set up an array." 102 years later. In the morning, Xia Xiaochan skillfully cut a clam and spun the dagger in her hand. Then, tender shreds of clam meat fell on the plate. Xia Xiaochan lit a pot, added oil, stir-fried garlic, and green peppers. After several stir-frying, the fire rose, and the clam meat was put into the pot. In the blink of an eye, a plate of shredded clam meat with green peppers was served. Bam! Xia Xiaochan kicked the door open, with one hand on her waist and the other holding a spatula, pointing at the room. "Look at the weather. Today, we're going to participate in the annual fish opening ceremony. Come on, it's still early. What are we going to eat for breakfast?" Bam! Bam! Xia Xiaochan picked up the fishing hook and hooked 2 sweet potatoes from the vegetable field. Spiritual energy rose in the air, and in an instant, 2 roasted sweet potatoes with overflowing spiritual energy came out of the oven. At this time, Han Fei walked out of the door lazily. "It's just a fish opening ceremony. You attend it every year and have attended it more than 100 times. Aren't you tired of it?" At this moment, Xia Xiaochan had lost her original girlish charm. In order not to be discovered by the villagers, she had changed her appearance and voice, and her hair was a little white now. However, Xia Xiaochan's temper was still the same. She was still a little unruly. At this moment, she snorted. "You're the one who indulged yourself. Now you're the former village leader of the Bright Moon Village. If you don't go, who dares to open the fish?" Han Fei said lazily, "Eat, eat, eat. Let's go after eating." Han Fei grabbed the roasted sweet potato and gnawed at it. Then he bent down and picked up a large portion of shredded clam meat with green pepper and stuffed it into his mouth. "Ah!" Suddenly, Xia Xiaochan exclaimed in a low voice, and her body trembled slightly. Han Fei couldn't help but frown. Again, Han Fei looked solemn. With a thought in his mind, the apocalyptic divine technique descended and enveloped Xia Xiaochan. Xia Xiaochan's face was pale. "I'm fine. Maybe it's because I got the god's blood too easily, so a small amount of it is disappearing now." Han Fei said, "In the past 3 years, almost half of the god's blood has been swallowed by an invisible force. Let's go back to the royal family of the mermaids. Your mother may know more about this. After all, she's the real son of God." "No." Xia Xiaochan's face turned serious. "I don't like the royal family of the mermaids. I don't want to go back. Anyway, you have the apocalyptic divine technique. No matter how much I lose, you can make up for it. If it's only this degree of loss, I can still persist. After living in the Bright Moon Village for nearly 100 years, Xia Xiaochan also liked this kind of life. She didn't have to go to sea to explore, and she didn't have to watch Han Fei run around and do all kinds of dangerous things. Fishing every few days, occasionally cooking delicious meals, and often playing fish dragon cards. This kind of life was really addictive. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, Xia Xiaochan didn't want to have contact with everything in the past. As soon as this contact was made, it was likely that these days would be gone. Han Fei could guess what Xia Xiaochan was thinking. She didn't insist, but he had already decided that if Xia Xiaochan's situation didn't improve in 2 years, he had to go to the royal family of the mermaids no matter what. Under the statue of Li Yingtian in the village, when Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan arrived, countless children of 7 or 8 years old were running all the way to tell each other about the place. The old village leader is here. The old village leader is here. Grandpa Leader, what's the prize this year? Granny Xia, can you ask Grandpa Leader to put something good? Xia Xiaochan said with a smile. The prize this time is good. Han Fei said with a sullen face. Don't block the way. Children, run slower. The so-called opening of the fish was a sacrifice at the beginning of the new year. The fish body needed to be completely dissected in a very short time, but the appearance of the fish body should not be destroyed. Finally, 100 talented teenagers carefully selected by the Bright Moon Village would compete with each other. The winner could touch the belly of the fish and get the reward of opening the fish. This was also a symbol of luck. It was said that the winner would be blessed by luck, but this was just a superstition. However, in the past 100 years, all the teenagers who touched the belly of the fish seemed to have good luck, so everyone believed it even more. And the old village leader had to open the fish. As soon as Han Fei came, a large group of people surrounded him. The village leader welcomed him with joy. Old village leader, I've been waiting for you for a long time. This year, we will open the big golden dragon. The scales of this big golden dragon are pure gold. It is the best big golden dragon we have ever caught. Han Fei said with a smile. They are all the same. Under my knife, they won't hurt a single scale. Haha, someone laughed and said, we can trust the old village leader's craftsmanship. Someone laughed. Granny Xia, his craftsmanship is good. You can let him kill fish every day. Let's see if he still likes it. That's right. He is so old, but he shows off every day. Han Fei didn't take it seriously. Xia Xiaochan followed him and saw Han Fei go straight to the table under the statue. This big golden dragon was 4 meters long, and its scales were golden, shining brightly in the sun. Han Fei shouted in a low voice, this year, the opening ceremony begins. A group of children shouted, I want the scales. Me too. And me. Someone shouted. The children are standing on the side and watching. Everyone will have a share later. Han Fei held a half-meter-long rectangular broadsword in his hand. His blade moved like a shadow as it slithered across the golden dragon's body. Wherever the blade passed, there was almost no trace of a cut on the dragon's body. In fact, both Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan had sealed their strength. Even now, Han Fei was only a hidden fisher, mainly because he had a strong control of the knife and knew the structure of these fish too well. If these people could see through this big golden dragon, they would definitely find that wherever Han Fei's knife passed, the fish's flesh and bones would be separated. Good knife technique. The crowd cheered, and Xia Xiaochan was also applauding. However, no one noticed that Xia Xiaochan's face was getting paler and paler. Xia Xiaochan felt that something was wrong again. But at this time, Han Fei was opening the fish, and Xia Xiaochan could only grit her teeth and bear it. On the other side, when Han Fei swept the last knife across the fish's belly, he couldn't help but throw the knife on the table and say with a smile, I announce Humph. Suddenly, Han Fei sensed something and looked back, only to find that Xia Xiaochan's face was pale. Han Fei was shocked and shouted casually, the fish opening ceremony is over. Girl, what's wrong? Granny Xia. Not good. Granny Xia's face is so pale. The current village leader hurriedly shouted, where is the spirit gatherer? Where is the spirit gatherer, Shui Fei? Go and call him. Han Fei said in a low voice. Don't bother. Let's go back first. A group of people followed, and most of them only thought that maybe Granny Xia's life was coming to an end. They couldn't help but feel sorry for the old village leader. After all, the lifespan of a hidden fisher was not much longer than that of ordinary people. Someone sighed. Before the old village leader became the village leader, he had served as the fishery patrol commander for a long time. It is said that he retired from Moonlight Town before that. I'm afraid he is not young anymore. I guess Granny Xia is not much worse. It's a pity that the old village leader is such a good person, and Granny Xia is also a good person. In Han Fei's courtyard, even though he closed the door and refused to see guests, there were still many people gathered outside. The new village leader said eagerly, the old village leader is so stubborn that he even set up a restriction in the courtyard. We can't get it all. Chapter 2093. Han Fei realized that something was wrong. Xia Xiaochan was a king, and it was impossible for her bloodline to dry up without warning. Even he had gone to investigate more than once, but to no avail. Han Fei believed that his eyesight was not bad now. It was impossible that he couldn't detect anything unusual in Xia Xiaochan's body. If he couldn't, he might not be able to detect it, even if he was in the heaven-opening realm. In the courtyard, the heaven-opening divine technique descended, and Han Fei consumed another 500 years of vitality to replenish Xia Xiaochan's strange bloodline. Her strength was sealed, but it didn't mean that her Tao was sealed, so the effect of the heaven-opening divine technique wouldn't be reduced at all. However, Han Fei was actually very shocked. This time, it was much more serious than in the morning. With his real realm, he could recover 70% to 80% in an instant even if he was in the heaven-opening realm. However, it could only help Xia Xiaochan for a while. In the past 3 years, Han Fei had consumed as much as 5,000 years of vitality to cast the heaven-opening divine technique. However, today's consumption was especially high. The only person Han Fei could think of who could solve this problem was Xia Hongzhu and eldest senior brother. In the past 200 years, Han Fei had attended every small gathering in the Void Temple. The last big gathering was after Jiuyin Ling preached to him. After listening to eldest senior brother's preaching, Han Fei, who had already seen the path, completely understood the Taoist heart. However, this time, there was still half a year before the centennial gathering. However, Han Fei couldn't wait. Compared with Xia Hongzhu, Han Fei trusted eldest senior brother more. After all, eldest senior brother was at least an emperor. At this time, Xia Xiaochan leaned against the bed and said, I've looked inside myself countless times and found no problem. I can even break out in my strongest state at any time. However, the inexplicable disappearance of this bloodline is really hard to explain. Maybe it's because my divine bloodline came too easily. Han Fei comforted her. It may also be because your strength has improved too fast in the past 100 years. As for why the bloodline disappeared, I have to find someone to ask. Xia Xiaochan's little face couldn't help but droop. Are you going to the mermaid royal family? Han Fei shook his head. No, Xia Xiaochan said in surprise. Then are you looking for Uncle Xian or the Snail King? Han Fei shook his head. No. Xia Xiaochan's eyelids twitched. If you don't look for him, who are you looking for? Martial Emperor City? Han Fei shook his head. Stop guessing. The Medicine King Heaven specializes in refining medicine. Can't we find one? Xia Xiaochan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. If it was just the Medicine King Heaven, no one could shake Han Fei. Han Fei sighed inwardly. He didn't want to tell Xia Xiaochan about the Void Temple. However, he felt that it was inappropriate to let Xia Xiaochan know too much now. The Void Temple was definitely involved in a lot of secrets, and it was the enemy of the Immortal Temple and the Time Temple. If Xia Xiaochan knew that he had entered the Void Temple, he didn't know what would happen in the future. Therefore, Han Fei just comforted Xia Xiaochan and made an excuse that he was going to the Medicine King Heaven and would return in 2 days. After a while, in a sea area, Han Fei activated the mark of the Void Temple in the depths of his soul. When Han Fei felt the mark in his mind flicker softly, Han Fei couldn't wait to say, Senior brother, I have something to ask of you. Can I start the centennial party in advance? After about 10 minutes, a figure finally appeared in Han Fei's mind. Yes. When senior brother confirmed that he could start the centennial party. In the void, the shadow of a huge bronze gate fell, and the bronze gate was suddenly covered by a white mist. In the eyes of other creatures, this place was suddenly covered by a layer of white mist, and they couldn't see the bronze gate at all. Han Fei couldn't wait to step to the bronze gate, pressed his human king token on the bronze gate, and the gate slowly opened. Han Fei took a slight breath and stepped in. It still looked the same as before. It seemed that the Void Temple's gathering place was this mountain peak that no one knew where. When Han Fei arrived, several figures appeared one after another. He saw that eldest senior brother was already sitting there, and then an azure dragon was swimming in the sky. Han Fei immediately bowed. Greetings, eldest senior brother, azure dragon. Azure dragon said, Junior brother, I heard that you have something urgent to do. Let's talk about it when everyone is here. Then, the big skeleton and second senior sister Kagura appeared. When senior brother Heavenly Thunder, who was ranked 10th, appeared, senior brother said, Junior brother Six Gods is dealing with the Undying Temple. 11 is competing for opportunities. There are only 10 people in today's party. Because they all came in advance because of Han Fei's request, the first thing they did was to look at Han Fei. Second senior sister Kagura said, Junior brother, I heard from senior brother that you are in trouble. Tell me about it. Senior sister Qinglian said, It's an emergency. Junior brother, what trouble are you in? Han Fei had just met them one by one, so he naturally had to solve his own problem first. Han Fei said, Senior brothers and senior sisters, my problem may be complicated. My wife is the child of the god's son. Finally, after the tribulation, she returned the god's blood. I help her recover her bloodline with divine spells. But now, the god's blood in my wife's body is disappearing for no reason. Even if I observe her all the time, I can't find any problem. I have performed divine spells many times, but I can only maintain the regeneration of her god's blood, but I can't stop it from disappearing. Recently, the god's blood in her body has disappeared too fast, so I have to come to ask you for help. After hearing Han Fei's explanation, before anyone could propose a solution, senior brother Tian Henji said with a smile, I didn't expect that junior brother already has a wife at such a young age. Senior sister Red Lotus giggled. How happy you are. We are all envious of you. Senior sister Dark Shadow asked, Do you all know the reason? Why don't I know it? The skeleton senior brother said, I don't know either. At this moment, senior brother Azure Dragon said, It's normal that you too don't know. Han Fei was dumbfounded. What's going on? Why are you still talking and laughing? Isn't this a bit too much? However, Shiji Kagura said, All right, stop joking around. Look at how anxious junior brother is. Junior brother, this is indeed a big deal, but it's also a good thing. That's a good thing? Han Fei was dumbfounded. I'm so distressed. How can it be a good thing? World Kagura smiled softly. You said that your wife has a god's bloodline. The birth of a bloodline will not disappear for no reason. Since she has inherited it, she has a god's bloodline. As for why the god's blood disappeared for no reason, it's because she is pregnant. What? At this time, Han Fei felt that his head was about to explode. This was not the kind of explosion that was like a bolt from the blue, but the kind that was congested with blood. It was excitement, shock, and disbelief. Han Fei couldn't help but feel his palms began to smoke, and he murmured, So that's it, huh? So it's a good thing? I have a son? World Kagura added, Don't be excited, junior brother. It's extremely difficult for strong masters to give birth to offspring, and your wife has a god's bloodline, which is even more difficult. You still have to continue to use your divine skill. Your situation is very strange. You haven't reached the required strength, but you have given birth to a god child, so the consumption is naturally great. Therefore, before your child takes shape, he needs to absorb a lot of God's bloodline. So, you have to continue to use your divine skill and help her produce God's blood at any time. Red Lotus followed. Don't worry, it won't be long before this phenomenon will disappear when his divine foundation is enough. But then Han Fei said, But when her mother gave birth to her, There wasn't much God's blood. There was only one drop. Senior Sister Red Lotus said, "So, your wife's talent must have been greatly limited at the beginning. Her birth must have been quite difficult. She didn't die prematurely, so she must have been protected by someone. It wasn't until you recast her bloodline that her overall foundation was improved again. However, in many realms before she became a king, she must have not been very complete. However, if she wants to make up for it now, she either has to be reborn or cultivate an incarnation and then merge with it. If she recultivates like this, her basic strength will definitely increase by several folds." Phew, Han Fei understood, let out a long breath, and completely relaxed. In his heart, he was ecstatic. Pregnant? He didn't expect his first child to be so good at tormenting people. At this moment, he heard Senior Sister Lotus say, "Little junior brother, Senior Sister will give you a Chaos Green Lotus. When you return, you can insert it into your wife's dantian. The vitality of the Green Lotus should be able to help you consume less of it." Han Fei was overjoyed. "Thank you, Senior Sister Lotus." Then, in the void, a lotus flower broke through the layers of void and finally fell in Han Fei's palm. A string of information emerged in Han Fei's eyes. Name: Chaos Green Lotus. Introduction: a chaotic spiritual treasure born in the depths of the chaotic sea. It contains boundless vitality. If one eats it at the heaven-splitting realm, they can live another life. Grade: Chaos Spiritual Artifact. Quality: Normal. Chaos Energy contained. 245,536 points. Effect: when an ordinary person is about to die, he can use this lotus to live another life. The heaven-opening realm could extend one's lifespan by 300,000 years. Venerable sovereigns could prolong their lives by 10,000 years. Could be used in medicine to form a pill. Chapter 2094. When Han Fei saw the information of the Chaos Green Lotus, he gasped in shock. Natural spiritual treasure? Live another life? Is this chaotic green lotus so advanced? Looking at the chaotic energy contained in it, Han Fei was speechless. "I've traveled the chaotic ocean sea, fought life-and-death battles, slaughtered several venerable emperors, and absorbed dozens of kings' sore seas to get so much chaotic energy. However, Senior Sister Green Lotus casually threw such a precious treasure. How is it different from a divine artifact?" Han Fei couldn't help but look solemn. Such a friendship deserved to be treated with caution. If there was a chance in the future, he would have to return it, even if Green Lotus felt that it was just a trivial thing to do. After solving Han Fei's problem, eldest senior brother said, "Little junior brother's problem has been solved. Anything else can be discussed here." Azure Dragon said, "The Black Dragon Emperor of the Dragon Clan is very radical. He may lead part of the Dragon Clan to reappear in the Sea Realm, so please be careful when you meet him." Senior brother Heavenly Thunder said, "It said that the God Clan found a starting land in the depths of the Chaos Sea and obtained a rare treasure to forge a divine weapon. It's at least an ultra-quality Chaos spiritual treasure, maybe even higher. If there are no accidents, the God Clan will have a peerless heavenly talent." Dark Shadow World said, "In the Star Sea, traces of a star behemoth were found." After solving Han Fei's problem, Han Fei was like a noob, clicking his tongue. This topic was too King high-end. He couldn't get a word in at all. The Black Dragon Emperor reappeared. An ultra-quality Chaos spiritual treasure? Even this chaotic green lotus was just an ordinary Chaos spiritual treasure. Top quality? What kind of thing was that? Also, Star Sea, Star Behemoth? What the hell is this? After a while, after the communication in front of all the senior brothers and senior sisters, eldest senior brother said, "Sit down. The lecture begins." Han Fei was immediately refreshed. If there were no special circumstances, the greatest benefit he could get from attending such a big gathering was eldest senior brother's lecture. Every time after eldest senior brother's lecture, Han Fei felt that he would gain a lot. However, at this moment, he was so excited that how could he calm down? However, when Han Fei heard the complicated preaching, he could not help but fall into an ethereal state. Every sermon was like an epiphany. Han Fei sensed that joy was growing from the depths of his heart. At that moment, or maybe during the long sermon, Han Fei seemed to have a kind of epiphany, an opportunity to open the sky, which seemed to be on the verge of emerging. It was as if he was in a dream and was about to eat a cake when he suddenly woke up from the dream. When Han Fei came back to his senses, he found that the lecture time had passed, but he only felt that a moment had passed. Of course, Han Fei didn't feel it was a pity. At least, Xia Xiaochan's problem had been solved, and he was going to have a son. Oh no, it could also be his daughter. But who cares? It's all the same. I haven't been a father yet. After bidding farewell to his senior brothers and sisters, the 100-year reunion came to an end. Han Fei quietly appeared in the sea outside. The shadow of the bronze gate dissipated, and the white mist gradually melted. Han Fei held a green lotus and quietly left. The next day, Han Fei wandered around the outer sea and reappeared in the small courtyard, leaving a projection. The projection merged with her body, and Xia Xiaochan was lying on the recliner in front of the door. Seeing Han Fei return, she suddenly got up and said, "You're back. Why are you holding a green lotus in your hand? Hey, sit there. Do you have any manners? Is there anyone who gets up like that? What's the difference between this and jumping?" Xia Xiaochan. Han Fei said, "I went to the Medicine King Heaven and stood in front of old Lady Qiu, scaring her to death. She had to give me a place with a spiritual treasure in the chaotic ocean. Look, don't underestimate this green lotus. This is a natural spiritual treasure. There is only one of it in the chaotic ocean, and it contains tremendous vitality and chaotic energy. Sit there, and I'll hit your dantian." Huh? Xia Xiaochan was dumbfounded. He had only gone out for 2 days, and he found a natural spiritual treasure? What level was a heaven and earth spiritual treasure? It can only be found by chance. Although there were natural spiritual treasures in the chaotic ocean, he found one in only 2 days? Han Fei didn't dare to say that it was not just a natural spiritual treasure, but a chaotic spiritual treasure, which was much more effective than ordinary natural spiritual treasures. However, Xia Xiaochan wondered, even if it is a natural spiritual treasure, why did you put it into my dantian? Han Fei said with a straight face, "Your body is weak, and this thing is full of vitality. If I put into your dantian, it won't affect your fetus. Your son can absorb the vitality and the blood of creatures." Huh? Xia Xiaochan was still confused. What fetus? How can I have a son? However, after a brief daze, Xia Xiaochan couldn't help but be shocked. What did you say? You said I. Xia Xiaochan couldn't help but look down at her belly and exclaim, "That's impossible. I can't feel it all. If I was pregnant, why didn't I show any signs?" Han Fei pressed Xia Xiaochan's shoulders with both hands and pressed her to sit on the recliner. Old Lady Qiu said that it's because our bloodline is too strong. Your son needs to absorb enough God's spirit blood pulse from you to build his foundation. He also said that you were malnourished when your mother gave birth to you. If it weren't for Chun Huangyan's protection, you might have died. Well, from this perspective, I can spare Chun Huangyan's life. He's still useful." Xia Xiaochan was still full of shock, as if she hadn't recovered from the shocking news. Han Fei added, "By the way, he also said, before you became a king, you didn't have enough God's spirit blood. That's why you didn't reach a perfect realm before. If you recultivate, your foundation and strength will be many times stronger than it is now. At that time, you will truly be the son of a god, the #1 expert in this world." Oh. Seeing Xia Xiaochan's casual response, Han Fei knew that she heard it, so he repeated it. The second time, Xia Xiaochan said, "That's not urgent. I can cultivate a reincarnation. In the future, I can still fuse with it and make up for what I lost before." Han Fei nodded. "That's not urgent. We have plenty of time. Don't move now. I'll put this lotus into your abdomen." A year passed. Thinking that Xia Xiaochan wasn't feeling well, Han Fei gradually stopped participating in the affairs of the Bright Moon Village and even went to the sea. When a healing divine light arrived, Han Fei performed the heaven-opening divine technique again to continue producing God's spirit blood. With the help of the chaotic green lotus, Han Fei rarely performed the heaven-opening divine technique in the past year. However, After only 1 year, the powerful chaotic green lotus was slowly absorbed this morning. At this moment, after Han Fei performed the heaven-opening divine technique again, he suddenly heard Xia Xiaochan exclaim in shock, "It's here! There's a small duh. Where is it?" Han Fei immediately rushed to Xia Xiaochan and pressed his hand on her belly. Then, in his perception, he saw a sesame-sized grain that seemed to be enshrouded in a faint green and gold light. After a year of hard work, Han Fei finally saw hope. It was said that human beings were pregnant for 10 months. In fact, it was the same for other people. But the Pioneer Sea realm might not be so simple. A year's time seemed to have just laid the foundation, and a sesame seed had appeared. Xia Xiaochan was overjoyed and was about to say that the god spirit blood was no longer consumed. However, she saw that Han Fei was already stunned, standing like a fool. He murmured, "Origin, the origin of life. What are you doing? What are you eating for breakfast today?" Suddenly, Xia Xiaochan realized that something was wrong. When she looked at Han Fei's eyes, her face couldn't help but change slightly. Han Fei had an epiphany. Han Fei had been hiding from the world for more than 200 years for two things. One was to strengthen his Taoist heart. Now, he had already seen through this path. The other was to wait for an opportunity to open the sky. In fact, when Han Fei knew where his Taoist heart was, he could already open the sky. But he, who had been reading the Emperor's letters all year round, had been thinking about the way of returning to the origin that the Emperor mentioned. For example, Han Xian cultivated all kinds of Taoism at the same time, which, in a sense, happened to fit the so-called way of returning to the origin. But Han Xian might have never thought so. And Han Fei, even though he had some guesses, he wasn't sure if Han Xian was right. However, when he saw the sesame-sized child in Xia Xiaochan's belly, he suddenly seemed to understand something. Why did the origin sea simulate the outside world? Since he knew about this, he had been piling up countless resources into the origin sea. It seemed that he had become very strong. However, if his Taoist heart was not strong enough, it could break his strength. Now he understood the Taoist heart. However, he hadn't found the opportunity to open the sky. If it was just the way of opening the sky itself, he could have opened the sky long ago. But that opportunity, or the way to integrate the Tao and the origin sea in the Emperor's letters, Han Fei had never found it. But at this moment, he suddenly understood. The origin of life indicated a new life. The world was reshaped, and everything was in line with the origin of nature. It was the normal way of the world's rotation, which could carry all kinds of Taoism. This was the so-called way of returning to the origin. Crack, in Xia Xiaochan's surprised eyes, the seal that Han Fei set on himself suddenly shattered at this moment, without warning.